Across the vast expanse of the northern taiga, a profound and heavy quiet rules the hours before dawn. Ancient, towering spruce trees stand as silent sentinels under a pale, starlit sky, their dense canopies catching the last lingering whispers of a late spring snowfall. The air is crisp and still, carrying the clean, earthy scent of damp pine needles and thawing granite. Far above, the star constellations slowly wheel across the dark velvet of the atmosphere, witnessing a landscape caught in the delicate transition between the lingering grip of winter and the hesitant rebirth of spring. In this sprawling, slumbering ecosystem, life operates on rhythms older than the forests themselves. Snowshoe hares crouch invisibly beneath low-hanging branches, and the deep, silent woods hold their breath. Tucked away from the open forest floor, hidden deep within a secluded crevice of ancient granite, lies a sanctuary. The secure natal den is shielded overhead by the massive, moss-draped trunk of a fallen spruce, a natural fortress offering absolute protection from the elements and the wider world. Within this dark, sheltered alcove, the ambient sounds of the wilderness soften into a comforting hush. The sigh of the soft wind through the upper canopy is reduced to a mere murmur, and the muffled weight of the snow outside creates an insulated chamber of profound peace. Here, sheltered within the stone and roots of the ancient taiga, the world narrows to a space of pure stillness, preparing for a quiet, momentous arrival. Within the sheltered security of the moss-lined granite cave, the newborn Eurasian lynx rests as a tiny, fragile spark of life. Weighing no more than a few hundred grams, the cub is entirely helpless, its eyes sealed shut against the darkness and its delicate ears folded against a world it cannot yet hear. Its fur is a dense, woolly coat of pale gray-brown, intricately patterned with faint, dark rosettes that will one day grow into effective camouflage among the dappled shadows of the taiga. For now, these spots are hidden against the warmth of the den, where the physical reality of the newborn is defined entirely by touch, instinct, and a desperate, absolute dependence on maternal care. Without sight or hearing, the tiny feline navigates its immediate surroundings through a world of pure sensation. Guided by the heat radiating from its mother's body, the cub inches forward, its oversized paws paddling softly against a thick mattress of emerald moss and shed winter fur. Every breath of the mother lynx creates a slow, rhythmic rise and fall, anchoring the newborn in a predictable, comforting tide of existence. Gently, the mother lowers her head, using her rough, warm tongue to clean and stimulate the tiny cub, encouraging its first unsteady breaths and circulation. With every soothing sweep of her tongue, she utters a low, deep, maternal purr, a steady vibrational hum that resonates through the stone and settles deep within the infant's bones. Surrounded by this protective cocoon of body heat and rhythmic sound, the newborn yields completely to the profound safety of the den, drifting into a deep, restorative sleep in the quiet heart of the northern forest. Enveloped by the deep contours of the granite crevice, the mother lynx arches her supple spine to form a living sanctuary around her fragile offspring. Mammalian thermoregulation in a newborn Eurasian lynx is not yet fully developed. Lacking sufficient brown adipose tissue and independent fat reserves, the cub depends entirely on direct physical contact to maintain its core body temperature against the lingering chill of the boreal spring. The mother's thick winter coat, now shedding in soft clumps, provides a downy underlayer that traps her generous body heat, transforming the narrow space into a thermal haven. She curls her substantial frame tightly inward, wrapping her heavy tail like a velvety bolster to block any lingering draft that might slip past the entrance. Pressing her chest intimately against the infant, she shares every breath in a slow, reciprocal cadence. This exchange of warmth does more than simply comfort. It regulates the cub's delicate metabolic rate, allowing the tiny body to conserve vital energy for growth. Against the mother's broad, steady rib cage, the infant rests secure, with every gentle expansion and contraction of her lungs. A deep, resonant rumble reverberates through the surrounding moss. This tactile vibration acts as a profound anchor for the blind and deaf newborn, translating the invisible presence of the mother into a tangible sense of safety. Safe within this fortress of fur and muscle, the tiny wildcat surrenders completely to the soothing quiet, drifting into an effortless, restorative slumber. Deprived of sight and hearing, the newborn lynx experiences the surrounding taiga not through light or sound, but as an intricate tapestry of touch and temperature. Without functional eyes or open ear canals, the cub's neurological processing centers rely heavily on the somatosensory cortex, which is acutely attuned to tactile gradients. Every nuance of the immediate world is mapped through specialized mechanoreceptors embedded within the skin and sensitive whiskers along the tiny muzzle. The ground beneath the infant is a patchwork of sensations. Coarse, dry mosses and soft, shed underfur provide a pliable texture that cushions the fragile skeletal structure, which is still largely cartilaginous and tender. As the cub shifts restlessly in its sleep, its tiny paws paddle against the maternal fur, registering the rich, musk-laden scent of the mother's skin and the comforting warmth of her milk-filled belly. Olfactory receptors, fully functional even at birth, guide the infant unerringly toward the source of nourishment and security, forging an immediate biochemical bond through scent alone. Friction, pressure, and thermal gradients dictate the boundaries of this hidden universe. When a faint, cool draft momentarily penetrates the crevices of the granite, the sudden drop in temperature prompts an instinctive rooting response, causing the cub to burrow deeper into the protective labyrinth of the mother's coat. Here, in the absolute safety of touch, the boundaries between the tiny wildcat and the nurturing body of the mother blur into a single, continuous experience of quiet existence. Outside the secluded granite nursery, the deep stillness of the taiga begins to undergo a subtle, imperceptible shift. High above the fallen spruce trunk, the star-dusted canopy of the boreal forest surrenders slowly to the advancing arc of morning. Faint, indirect light filters downward, threading through the intricate gaps between weathered bark and frost-kissed stone. These delicate shafts of illumination cast soft, pale beams across the protective mineral walls, gently dissolving the uniform shadows of the night. In biology, this creeping transition marks the circadian boundary between nocturnal dormancy and the awakening of diurnal rhythms. Yet deep within the crevice, the ambient temperature rises by only a fraction of a degree, registered merely as a gentle easing of the chill. The incoming light does not wake the newborn. Instead, it traces quiet patterns across the mother's tawny flank, illuminating the fine dust motes suspended in the sheltered air. Photoreceptors in the cub's closed eyes remain entirely dormant, shielded behind sealed lids, yet the gradual diffusion of ambient luminescence changes the quality of the den's microclimate. As the stone slowly absorbs the earliest indirect warmth of the approaching day, the thermal gradient inside the nest stabilizes even further. The mother shifts slightly, her amber eyes reflecting the dim, pearlescent glow at the mouth of the fissure. She tucks her chin lower over her resting infant, anchoring the tiny form in perpetual twilight. The faint glow touches nothing of the outside world, serving only as a quiet herald of the expanding forest beyond, while the safe, secluded hollow remains anchored in deep, timeless peace. Here, in the secluded heart of the granite nursery, life distills down to its most fundamental architecture. The tiny Eurasian lynx rests in profound, restorative slumber, its metabolic energy conserved entirely for cellular growth. Without the demands of sight or sound, the newborn's existence is a masterclass in quiet efficiency governed by the rhythmic rise and fall of maternal respiration. This deep physiological rest is essential. During these early hours of life, growth hormone surges to mend, build, and strengthen the delicate musculoskeletal framework of the future apex predator. Outside, the ancient taiga continues its slow awakening, but within the sheltered hollow, time seems suspended. The moss-lined crevice maintains a microclimate of unwavering stability, shielding the infant from the lingering chill of the northern spring. Every breath drawn by the mother releases a gentle, familiar warmth that blankets the cub, reinforcing a bond written in scent, touch, and steady heartbeats. As the quiet hours deepen into the morning, the newborn stirs only slightly, its tiny paws twitching in a dream of nursing before settling back against the soft fur of the flank. Here, beneath the towering boughs of the boreal forest, the foundations of a solitary wildcat's existence are set in absolute tranquility. There is no rush, no demand, and no exposure, only the quiet continuation of an ancient lineage, protected within the dark, warm embrace of the earth. Deep within the sheltering cradle of the granite crevices, the cool stillness of the spring night slowly yields to the earliest breath of dawn. The interior of the natal den remains quiet, wrapped in shadows and the gentle, steady rhythm of resting life. Outside the narrow rock fissure, a faint breeze stirs the upper canopy of the northern taiga, carrying a distant, delicate greeting of morning birdsong down toward the stone wall. Gradually, a pale shaft of morning light slips through a narrow fracture in the rocky roof above. This thin golden finger reaches downward, touching the cool stone and slowly warming its surface. As the sunlight drifts deeper into the enclosure, it illuminates microscopic motes of dust suspended in the damp, earthy air, casting long, soft shadows across the floor. The light gently extends across the protected bed of moss and shed fur where the infant lynx rests. For weeks, this subterranean chamber has been a world defined entirely by touch, warmth, and the comforting scent of maternal fur. Now, the quiet illumination begins to paint the darkness in muted tones of amber and gray. The thick, insulating moss absorbs the first touch of warmth, exhaling a rich, organic scent of damp soil and ancient stone. In this tranquil sanctuary, the boundaries of the night dissolve into a peaceful morning haze. The ambient chill retreats, replaced by a slow, comforting radiance that blankets the small den in serene stillness. Within the gentle amber warmth of the illuminated den, a quiet biological milestone unfolds. The infant lynx blinks against the unfamiliar brightness, its tiny eyelids, sealed shut since birth to protect developing optic nerves, finally parting. Muscles around the delicate sockets contract, allowing the first fragile beams of morning light to touch the surface of the developing eyes. At first, the visual world is entirely formless. The intricate rods and cones within the retina, previously shielded in total darkness, register only a diffuse, milky haze. Slowly, shapes begin to coalesce from the gloom. The young predator perceives no sharp edges or clear horizons, only a gentle watercolor wash of muted grays, rich earth browns, and soft charcoal shadows cast by the rocky walls. This initial panorama of soft focus is remarkably peaceful. The comforting silhouette of the nesting site emerges slowly, a blurred tapestry of dried moss, shed winter fur, and the familiar, overarching curve of the granite overhang. There is no jarring shock of clarity, but rather a gradual softening of the shadows into recognizable forms. The eyes adjust to the low illumination, their pupils wide and dark, capturing every scarce photon of the filtered dawn. In this blurred sanctuary, the newly opened gaze rests on nothing demanding or overwhelming. The hazy environment remains safe and enclosed, a soothing painting of muted tones that invites the heavy eyelids to droop once more, resting from the gentle exertion of first sight. With eyes resting once more against the cozy bedding, the young lynx shifts its attention from sight to movement, engaging the delicate neural pathways connecting brain to muscle. The nervous system, still in its early stages of myelination, fires slow impulses down tiny spinal nerves, urging the body to stretch. Small front paws, tipped with retractable claws yet dull and blunt, knead the springy bed of dried moss and shed underfur. These early motor skills are wonderfully clumsy. The infant's hind legs, disproportionately large in a classic display of heterochronic growth, wobble beneath a torso that is heavy with sleep. A soft, involuntary yawn parts the tiny pink jaws, revealing milk teeth barely breaking through the gums. With an unsteady heave, the cub attempts to stand, pushing upward against gravity. The limbs tremble under the modest weight, lacking the precise cerebellar coordination required for true balance, and the small body sinks back down into the comforting embrace of the nest. This faltering exertion is essential. Each contraction of immature muscle fibers stimulates proprioceptors within the joints, sending vital feedback to the developing cerebellum. The cub rolls slightly to one side, paws paddling the air in a slow, phantom stride, practicing the gait of a great hunter long before it will ever stalk the taiga floor. There is no urgency in these movements, only the instinctive drive to tone the frame within the secure boundaries of the den. Surrounded by the scent of earth and moss, the tiny body relaxes completely, letting the gentle, steady rhythm of deep breathing restore its quiet energy. As the tiny form rests in the quiet cradle of the nest, the sensory world expands beyond the tactile warmth of the den floor. Through the narrow rock crevices overhead, sounds from the awakening spring taiga drift inward, carried on a gentle breeze that stirs the stale air. These auditory signals provide the developing brain with its first vital connection to the wider ecosystem. Human ears might strain to catch them, but the infant's delicate pinnae, the external ears, now twitching and rotating toward the source, readily capture the subtle frequencies of the forest. High above, faint bird song from the canopy trickles down like falling water, a cascade of melodic notes from early migratory thrushes testing their morning voices. These acoustic vibrations stimulate the auditory cortex, encouraging the rapid formation of neural synapses essential for future survival. Intermingled with the birdsong are the complex, low-frequency echoes of a changing landscape. From a distant slope, the muffled crack and slide of melting ice slipping from a snow-laden pine branch sends a heavy, resonant thud through the bedrock, vibrating softly against the stone walls of the sanctuary. It is the sound of spring reclaiming the forest, a slow transition of water and stone. Closer to the den entrance, the dry whisper of wind brushing against last autumn's fallen needles blends with the rustling of dry moss beneath the cub's shifting weight. Every sound is filtered through the damp, insulating stone, turning the wild symphony of the taiga into a series of soft, murmuring whispers. Safe within this acoustic cocoon, the young lynx listens passively, its steady, rhythmic breathing falling into a peaceful cadence with the heartbeat of the forest just beyond the rocks. Into this quiet acoustic cocoon drifts a familiar, welcome current. The heavy, stagnant air of the inner chamber shifts, carrying the crisp, resinous scent of pine needles, damp earth, and the cool moisture of melting snowdrifts. It is an olfactory signature long before it is a visual one, registering instantly in the developing olfactory bulb of the young lynx. The mother is near. Without a sound, the adult female slides her heavy, muscular frame through the narrow, angled stone crevice. Her footpads, dense with coarse winter fur, make no sound upon the granite floor. Her return is a masterclass in stealth, honed by years of navigating the treacherous taiga. As she eases her long body into the nursery nest, she brings with her the vast, untamed breath of the waking forest. The physical presence of the adult changes the atmosphere of the den entirely. Her broad flank presses softly against the tiny, vulnerable form of the cub, offering an immediate perimeter of absolute safety. This vital proximity stabilizes the infant's body temperature, sealing out the lingering chill of the stone walls. Instinctively, the juvenile responds to the warm, reassuring weight, shifting its clumsy limbs closer to the thick fur of the maternal shoulder. The biological bond between parent and offspring deepens through this silent, restorative contact, grounding the growing life in a profound, immovable stillness. Drawn to the familiar heat, the infant tucks its chin against the soft underfur of the mother's chest, finding the exact contour designed for its comfort. The female lowers her massive head, her rough tongue sweeping across the crown of the cub's small skull in a long, rhythmic grooming stroke. This maternal licking stimulates the infant's circulation and digestion, an essential tactile interaction that mimics the gentle caress of the wind outside. As she tends to her offspring, a deep, resonant vibration swells within her chest cavity. This low-frequency purr, operating at a biological frequency known to promote cellular regeneration and bone healing, fills the narrow stone chamber like a physical wave. The sound reverberates through the granite floor and travels directly through the cub's sensitive skeletal frame. It is a powerful acoustic signal of total safety. Refined by millions of years of evolutionary success, faint birdsong still filters down from the distant taiga canopy, mingling with the steady, reassuring rumble of the mother's breathing. Underneath this soothing auditory blanket, the infant's newly awakened eyes grow heavy. The hazy, out-of-focus shapes of the den begin to dissolve back into a comforting darkness. Relaxed muscles loosen completely against the thick maternal flank, and tiny limbs twitch once, twice, before settling into a state of absolute stillness. Surrounded by the scent of pine and the unyielding warmth of the adult, the young lynx surrenders to deep, restorative slumber, safely anchored at the very heart of the quiet forest. The spring rain falls with a quiet, persistent grace over the rocky slopes of the northern taiga. Each droplet strikes the granite stones of the den's protective overhang, dissolving the lingering crusts of winter snow into clear, gentle rivulets. High above the entrance, the heavy boughs of ancient spruce trees catch the moisture, releasing a soothing, rhythmic cascade of water that drips steadily onto the thick carpet of rustling pine needles below. Inside the shadowed shelter, the acoustic environment shifts into a symphony of seasonal transition. The sharp, crystalline silence of the frozen months has melted away, replaced by the soft whisper of a gentle wind filtering through the evergreen canopy and the distant, melodic murmur of a swollen stream rushing through the valley. Overhead, migratory birds add their tentative, liquid notes to the evening air, signaling the grand awakening of the boreal forest. Enveloped in this sanctuary of sound, the young cub rests deeply against the warm, steady flank of its mother. Its developing auditory system, finely tuned over the weeks, registers the comforting cadence of the rain and the slow, rhythmic beat of maternal breathing. Every drop of moisture brings the transformation to the world outside, washing the rocky earth with the rich, clean scent of awakening soil and thawed resin. It is a moment of profound peace, suspended between the quiet endurance of winter and the vibrant, growing pulse of spring. Inside the shadowed alcove, the cub stirs from its deep slumber, motivated by an internal biological clock that heralds a new stage of physical growth. Stretching its lengthening limbs, the young animal extends tiny claws and flexes newly strengthening muscles across its shoulders and hind legs. Weeks of rich nourishment have transformed its once helpless frame, laying down dense layers of muscle and bone essential for navigating the rugged northern landscape. Balancing remains a delicate art. As the cub attempts to rise upon unsteady paws, its neurological pathways rapidly building myelin sheaths around growing nerves, fire in clumsy succession. It wobbles gently on the soft, insulating bed of shed winter fur and green moss, its tiny tail twitching in concentration. With each cautious shift of weight, proprioceptive sensors in the joints and muscles send vital signals back to the developing cerebellum, fine-tuning spatial awareness and postural control. A low, rumbling vibration resonates from the mother's chest, acting as a tactile anchor for the practicing infant. Drawn to this familiar source of warmth, the cub presses its side against her dense fur, receiving a reassuring sweep of a warm tongue across its crown. This maternal grooming stimulates blood circulation and reinforces neural bonding, comforting the young mammal as it masters the mechanics of standing. Slowly, the awkward tremors subside, replaced by a steadier posture that hints at the formidable endurance required of its species. Settling back onto the bedding with a soft, contented sigh, the cub closes heavy eyelids, its body resting and consolidating the day's hard-won motor lessons within the quiet safety of the maternal sanctuary. Just beyond the protective overhang of the rocky shelter, the landscape undergoes a quiet metamorphosis as the winter snowpack slowly yields to the gentle breath of spring. Where unbroken white once dominated the horizon, retreating drifts now carve intricate, scalloped edges into the terrain, revealing patches of dark, nutrient-rich soil beneath. This damp earth, warmed by the lengthening afternoon sun, breathes out a rich, earthy aroma of decomposing organic matter and awakening microfauna, a complex olfactory cocktail that signals the true beginning of the biological year. Clustered across the newly exposed ground, cushions of velvet green moss absorb the gentle spring rain, swelling with moisture and creating a resilient, springy carpet. Fallen pine needles, washed meticulously clean by days of steady precipitation, form a fine, rust-colored mosaic scattered among protruding gray roots and lichen-covered stones. As meltwater trickles in delicate, winding threads down the slope, it feeds this awakening understory, hydrating the dormant seeds and spores waiting beneath the surface. This shifting margin between stone and soil forms a natural threshold for the growing cub. The receding snow line marks the boundary of the known sanctuary, opening a vast, sensory-rich frontier just inches from the den entrance. Here, the temperature gradient is palpable, shifting from the sheltered stillness of the alcove to the refreshing, moisture-laden air drifting through the spruce trees. Every square inch of the uncovered forest floor hums with chemical activity, as soil bacteria and fungi rouse from hibernation to process the seasonal detritus, enriching the habitat that will sustain the young animal through the months ahead. A sudden, gentle draft drifts across the rocky threshold, carrying an entirely new dimension of the awakening taiga straight into the dim interior of the shelter. This soft current of air is laden with complex molecules released by the thawing forest, the sharp, resinous tang of pine sap warming on high branches, the sweet, yeasty scent of fermenting leaf litter, and the subtle mineral aroma of fresh meltwater rushing over granite stones. For the young lynx, whose olfactory bulb and neural pathways are experiencing a rapid growth spurt, this invisible tide of information acts as a profound awakening for the developing nervous system. The cub's small pink nose twitches rhythmically, nostrils flaring as they capture the intricate chemical signature of the changing world outside. Each inhalation sends a cascade of unfamiliar signals along the olfactory nerve, stimulating the brain to catalog and map these environmental markers for the very first time. There is the sharp bite of awakening vegetation competing with the heavy, rich perfume of damp earth, blending into a multi-sensory portrait of spring. Whiskers brush against the cool air, registering the subtle change in barometric pressure and humidity as the breeze eddies within the alcove. Completely fascinated by the invisible symphony of scents, the little feline stretches its neck forward, leaning trustingly into the refreshing current. The brain processes these distant odors, perhaps a faint trace of thawing moss or the far-off musk of an emerging rodent, igniting instinctive curiosities that will eventually guide its survival. Safe within the maternal embrace of the shadowed den, the infant simply breathes, absorbing the vast and changing wilderness one gentle molecule at a time. The soft patter of spring rain has slowed to a gentle mist, leaving the rocky threshold glistening under the silver light of late afternoon. Guided by an irresistible curiosity and the steady, reassuring warmth of its mother's flank, the growing cub inches forward across the sandy stone floor. With every deliberate motion, the infant's newly strengthened limb muscles contract and release, coordinating balance in a way that winter's confined shelter never required. Then, for the very first time, small padded paws step past the shadow of the den and press directly into the wet earth of the taiga floor. A quiet shiver travels through the cub's frame as millions of tactile receptors within the paw pads register an entirely novel sensation. Unlike the dry fur of the den or the packed snow of early spring, the dark soil is cool, yielding, and alive with texture. Tiny claws instinctively spread, gripping the damp moss and granular dirt to test this unfamiliar foundation. The mother remains close, a monumental wall of comforting amber fur, her low, rumbling purr vibrating through the air like a steady heartbeat. She nudges the infant gently beneath the chin, offering silent encouragement as the cub takes another small, wobbly step into the wide wilderness. The ambient air carries the clean, refreshing aroma of saturated pine needles and awakening earth, washing over wide, observant eyes taking in the rich greens and browns of the thawing forest. Satisfied by this brief, courageous journey beyond the birthplace, the little feline allows itself to be guided backward, stepping softly into the comforting embrace of the shadows as the day quietly fades. Heavy with the sweet exhaustion of discovery, the small body surrenders to a profound and natural fatigue. The newly coordinated muscles, having worked harder today than in all its weeks of life combined, relax completely as the cub allows its mother to nudge it back into the deepest recess of the rocky shelter. Her broad, warm tongue sweeps rhythmically over the damp fur, smoothing the golden strands and drying the trace moisture of the spring mist. This attentive grooming stimulates the infant's peripheral circulation, encouraging deep restorative sleep while reinforcing the vital bond of trust and security. As the late afternoon light softens into the cool violet hues of evening, the forest outside grows quiet. The steady drip of melting snow from the boughs of spruce trees slows to an occasional, hollow plop against the mossy ground. Safe within the shadowed womb of the den, the cub curls into a compact, furry crescent against the thick underbelly of its mother. Its tiny ribs rise and fall in a slow, even cadence, matching the deep, resonant rhythm of the adult's breathing. In this state of profound rest, the infant's brain processes the day's overwhelming influx of sensory data, consolidating the neural pathways formed by the first scent of damp earth and the touch of cool spring soil. The rapid firing of neurons during this deep sleep stage is essential for neurological maturation, turning fleeting daytime experiences into lasting instincts. Outside, the shadows lengthen across the thawing taiga, and the wilderness settles into a peaceful, quiet slumber, cradled by the gentle pulse of the changing season. Deep within the shadowed security of the rocky crevice, the air carries the ancient, familiar scent of dry moss and maternal warmth. For weeks, this narrow fissure has been the entire universe for the young lynx, a safe haven of dim stone and slumber. But tonight, a new current stirs the heavy atmosphere. A cool, crisp breath of evening air drifts down from the northern taiga, carrying 1,000 unfamiliar stories from the open forest beyond. At the mouth of the shelter, the mother sits in absolute stillness, Her amber eyes reflect the long, golden slants of sunset filtering through the distant pines. She emits a low, rhythmic purr, a gentle, resonant vibration that acts as an invisible anchor, pulling her most active cub forward. Hesitating at the very edge of the familiar stone, the small feline stretches its neck. Its sensitive whiskers twitch rapidly, cataloging the shifting chemistry of the breeze. Every nerve ending is alive with anticipation. Slowly, the cub shifts its weight, lifting a diminutive paw to test the ground just beyond the threshold. This is a critical moment in neurological development. For the first time, the soles of the cub's paws transition from the smooth, predictable granite of the inner den to the wild exterior earth. Cool soil, interwoven with the fibrous network of decaying pine needles and damp humus, presses upward against sensitive paw pads. It is an entirely new sensory input, stimulating the developing somatosensory cortex as the brain registers textures vastly different from stone or fur. With a soft, tentative step, the small cat crosses the threshold. The gentle wind rustles the surrounding leaves, and a distant thrush sings its final twilight notes. The vast, breathing expanse of the northern forest welcomes the young explorer. Beneath the amber glow of the setting sun, the young lynx pauses to process the rich tapestry of the forest floor. Every square inch of earth holds an intricate puzzle of organic chemistry. The cub lowers its black-tipped nose, inhaling deeply through moist nostrils. Olfactory receptors fire rapidly, translating invisible chemical signatures into a vivid map of the taiga. A faint, earthy trace reveals where a beetle has burrowed beneath a rotting log, while a sharper, metallic tang marks the resin weeping from the bark of a nearby pine. The physical sensations continue to multiply with each deliberate movement. Beneath the velvet soft pads of the cub's paws, the ground shifts from smooth stone to a spongy cushion of damp emerald moss. This living carpet yields gently, exercising delicate ankle ligaments and stimulating the nervous system to make micro-adjustments in balance. As the small feline takes another cautious step, the prickly points of tiny fallen pine needles brush against sensitive fur, contrasting sharply with the cool, granular texture of rich humus underneath. These novel inputs are vital for neurological growth, helping the developing brain map the complex three-dimensional world. The rustling leaves overhead create a soothing acoustic backdrop, mingling with the subtle whisper of needles swaying in the gentle wind. Nearby, the maternal figure remains a steadfast silhouette, watching with patient amber eyes as her offspring absorbs the countless textures and scents of the wild evening. Every touch of soil and breath of wind gently anchors the small cat deeper into the rhythms of the northern forest. As the sun dips further toward the jagged horizon, the architecture of the taiga transforms. Long amber shadows stretch across the forest floor, painting the mossy earth in alternating bands of warm gold and deep, cool indigo. For the young lynx, this shifting geometry introduces a brand new visual challenge. The developing eyes of the kitten, rich in light-gathering rod cells designed for twilight vision, track the lengthening silhouettes with intense curiosity. Slender white trunks of young birch cast dark, leaning lines across the carpet of pine needles. When a gentle evening breeze stirs the canopy overhead, these shadows begin to dance and sway upon the ground. Initially, the cub crouches low, muscles tensing instinctively as a pool of darkness shifts abruptly near a rotting stump. The brain rapidly processes this movement, teaching the young feline to distinguish between solid, physical objects and the harmless, fluid motion of fading light. Vision in the dimming northern woods relies heavily on contrast rather than sharp color, and the cub learns to read the landscape through these graduating tones of gray and gold. A stray beam of sunlight catches the floating motes of dandelion seeds drifting lazily through the air, turning them into glowing embers against the darkening timber. The mother remains motionless nearby, her spotted coat blending seamlessly into the dappled shade. By observing her unconcerned posture, the kitten understands that the lengthening shadows harbor no threats, only the peaceful transition from day to evening in a quiet, ancient home. Just a few paces ahead, the maternal silhouette serves as a living anchor in the vastness of the woods. The mother lynx moves with deliberate grace, her large paws making barely a sound upon the cushioned moss. She pauses beside a granite outcrop, turning her head just enough to keep the exploring kitten within her field of vision. A low, rhythmic purr emanates from deep within her chest, a vibrational frequency that carries a profound sense of emotional security across the quiet air. This familiar acoustic cue acts as an invisible tether, calming the rapid heart rate of the young feline and reinforcing a steady baseline of confidence. Rather than physically steering her offspring, she allows the cub the autonomy to navigate fallen branches and uneven terrain alone, intervening only with a gentle nudge of her damp nose if a misstep approaches the edge of a steep drop. Through this silent vigilance, the kitten absorbs vital lessons in spatial awareness and cautious movement. The mother's relaxed posture communicates a silent message. The territory is vast, but it is entirely manageable. By observing the unhurried flick of her ear and the steady blink of her amber eyes, the growing cat learns how to read the subtle language of the taiga. When the mother settles gracefully beside the roots of a towering pine, her body heat and steady breathing offer a restorative sanctuary, grounding the spirited explorer in a deep, enduring sense of maternal protection as the evening chill settles in. A gentle evening wind descends from the northern slopes, moving softly through the delicate canopy of young birch trees. High overhead, the pale green leaves perform a slow, rhythmic dance, releasing a dry, papery rustle that drifts down toward the forest floor. Beneath this rustling ceiling, the air carries a tapestry of distant, unfamiliar sounds, the final, melodic notes of a thrush settling into the branches, the hollow rapping of a woodpecker miles away, and the faint, rushing murmur of a snow-melt stream winding through the lowlands. Hearing these novel acoustic elements, the small lynx freezes in place. Its triangular head tilts, and the prominent black tufts atop its ears swivel independently, acting like miniature satellite dishes tuning into the acoustic environment. In young felines, the development of the auditory cortex relies heavily on these early exposures to ambient soundscapes. Every vibration helps map the three-dimensional space of the taiga, teaching the growing brain to distinguish between the harmless friction of a passing breeze and the stealthy footfall of a potential rival. The cub's whiskers twitch as the moving air brushes against its sensitive muzzle, delivering directional cues carried upon the invisible currents. Instead of startling, the kitten absorbs the layered chorus with quiet curiosity. The wind dies down as quickly as it arose, leaving behind a profound, expectant hush that settles gently over the mossy earth, inviting the little cat to listen even closer to the peaceful breathing of the forest. A heavy, delicious weariness begins to settle into the cub's small muscles, dimming the bright edge of its curiosity. The boundless energy that fueled its first great expedition fades as natural metabolic rhythms signal the need for physical restoration. Energy conservation is vital for young mammals. Sleep is the physiological state during which growth hormone surges and neural pathways forged during waking exploration are permanently consolidated within the brain. Sensing this shifting state, the mother turns homeward, her low, rumbling purr acting as an acoustic anchor in the dimming light. The cub follows the familiar scent trail left by her large, furred paws, retracing its steps past the mossy boulders and the slender birch trunks. The sky above transitions smoothly from sunset amber to deep twilight blue, casting long, soft shadows across the northern floor. Reaching the relative security of the rocky crevice where the evening began, the little cat curls tightly against its mother's warm, rhythmic flank. The ambient sounds of the forest fade into a steady, soothing hum. With eyes slowly closing and soft breaths matching the gentle rhythm of the taiga night, the cub drifts into peaceful rest, safe beneath the vast, quiet canopy. As night fully claims the vast northern taiga, a profound stillness settles over the ancient evergreens. Pale moonlight filters down through the awakening canopy, casting intricate patterns of silver and deep shadow across a dense, damp grove of ferns. This dappled luminance illuminates the resting form of a young lynx, who settles deep into a secure, moss-lined hollow, transitioning from the cautious explorations of sunset into deep, restorative repose. The growing feline undergoes a vital biological shift. In this quiet phase of early life development, slumber is not merely rest, it is an active state of physiological consolidation. Within the safety of the fern grove, the cub's brain begins to process the day's complex sensory inputs, weaving the sights, scents, and textures of the forest into long-term neural pathways. The ambient air of the spring night cools steadily, yet the surrounding vegetation and protective terrain retain a gentle, lingering warmth from the afternoon sun. This thermal stability is essential for the young predator, whose developing body relies on steady temperatures to conserve metabolic energy during sleep. The cooling atmosphere prompts a natural drop in the cub's core body temperature, signaling the onset of slow-wave sleep, the deepest, most healing tier of rest. Breathed in slowly, the midnight air carries the crisp fragrance of thawing earth and pine resin. The forest around the resting cub breathes in unison with the season, a quiet living tapestry illuminated by the soft, silvery glow of the spring moon, holding the young feline safely in the palm of the wild. The nocturnal forest is far from silent. Rather, it hums with the steady, rhythmic cadence of awakening crickets and the deep, resonant hoot of a distant owl echoing across the valley. A soft sigh of wind moves through the overhead pine needles, creating a continuous, low-frequency wave that ripples down through the ancient trunks and into the damp soil of the fern grove. Even in deep repose, the young lynx is exquisitely attuned to this acoustic landscape. Its oversized, tufted ears twitch instinctively in response to the vibrations pulsing through the ground and air. These specialized feline ears act as natural acoustic collectors, capturing the subtle infrasonic frequencies produced by the shifting earth and distant woodland creatures. Without needing to open its eyes, the resting cub processes this intricate tapestry of sound. Each low-frequency rumble and rustle acts as a silent anchor, grounding the growing feline within the vast geography of the northern wilderness. The steady thrum of insects and the distant call of nocturnal raptors blend into a continuous, predictable background lullaby, signaling that the surrounding environment is secure. This constant auditory input feeds the young brain's neural development, allowing the resting predator to map the taiga's nocturnal rhythms while safely tucked away in the mossy hollow. The world outside continues its ancient, nocturnal turning, held in a delicate balance of sound and stillness, washing over the cub in gentle, repetitive waves that invite the deepest phases of peaceful restoration. Curled securely against the massive, silver-tipped flank of its mother, the young lynx experiences a profound biological necessity, shared maternal warmth. At this transitional stage of development, the cub's internal metabolic processes are still maturing, making thermoregulation during the cold spring night a delicate balancing act. The mother's large, insulated body acts as a steady thermal reservoir, radiating a deep, comforting heat that penetrates the cub's soft underfur and maintains its optimal core temperature without expending precious energy stores. This intimate physical proximity offers far more than simple physiological comfort. As the mother breathes, a slow, deep, rhythmic cadence, the entire rib cage moves with a reassuring mechanical certainty. Every rise and fall of her chest transmits a predictable tactile pulse through the mossy ground and against the cub's side. For the resting predator, this steady vibration serves as a living shield against the quiet vulnerabilities of the dark taiga. The scent of damp earth, pine resin, and maternal musk envelops the makeshift den site in an invisible boundary of absolute security. Nestled within this haven of shared body heat, the young feline's nervous system shifts entirely into restorative sleep physiology. Hormones favoring cellular repair and neural growth circulate freely through the relaxed body. The mother's protective bulk completely blocks the chill midnight draft sweeping across the fern glade, allowing the cub to surrender completely to a restorative slumber. Safe within this circle of warmth, the boundaries between mother and cub blur, anchoring the growing feline in a timeless state of pure, untroubled rest. Deep sleep soon overtakes the small feline, carrying the young predator into a crucial biological state where the brain actively processes the novel sights, sounds, and scents encountered during the day's first cautious explorations. Within the quiet stillness of the midnight grove, specialized neural circuits fire rapidly in a replay of waking adventures. The scent trails of scurrying voles, the shimmering textures of dew-drenched ferns, and the strange, low-frequency vibrations of the nocturnal forest are carefully sorted, filtered, and woven into the architecture of memory. This is the vital work of restorative rest during early mammalian development. As the cub slips further into rapid eye movement slumber, tiny muscles twitch involuntarily along the slender legs and oversized paws. These delicate spasms are far more than mere nocturnal dreaming. They are the physical outward signs of internal neurological housekeeping. Every tiny tremor helps to strengthen developing neural pathways, fine-tune motor coordination, and accelerate physical growth while the body remains entirely still. In this hushed sanctuary beneath the moonlit pine boughs, the day's scattered lessons take deep, permanent root within the young mind. The wild rhythms of the taiga become familiar templates, encoded safely into the resting brain, protected entirely by maternal presence and the tranquil hush of the spring woods. The small feline drifts in an untroubled state of silent restoration, growing stronger with every measured breath. A gentle gust of wind sweeps through the understory, rustling the damp ferns and carrying the rich scents of earth and melting snow across the forest floor. The sudden movement disturbs the still air of the grove, sending a cascade of silver droplets falling from the fronds. Caught in the sensory slipstream between deep slumber and waking consciousness, the cub stirs slightly. It lifts its heavy head from the mossy ground to survey the shifting moonlit shadows with hazy, half-open eyes. The world outside the warm circle of maternal fur feels vast and cool, alive with the subtle motion of the midnight breeze. Through half-closed eyelids, the young feline absorbs the quiet geometry of the night. It detects no disturbance in the familiar shadows, only the swaying geometry of the ancient pines and the gentle undulation of the verdant undergrowth. A soft, involuntary sigh escapes the tiny chest as the ambient acoustic vibrations of the taiga wash gently over its senses. Reassured by the steady, rhythmic breathing of the mother beside it and the comforting sense of its immediate surroundings, the tension ebbs away from the small frame. The heavy eyelids begin to droop once more, weighed down by the deep comfort of early spring. The young animal blinks slowly, letting out one final, contented sigh as the cool air brushes against its whiskers. Slipping effortlessly back into the soothing embrace of sleep, the cub lets its head sink fully into the soft, fragrant moss, resting securely within the tranquil heart of the midnight forest. The cub tucks its nose beneath its paws once more, drifting back into peaceful slumber as the midnight hours slowly tick onward. In the stillness of deep sleep, the young feline's brain enters the crucial rapid eye movement phase, actively processing the day's vast sensory tapestry, the textures of rough bark, the scent of damp moss, and the geometry of moonlit shadows. This restorative quietude is vital for neurological development and memory consolidation, allowing the nervous system to mature under the protective veil of darkness. Beside the resting youngster, The mother's body continues to radiate a steady, reliable source of maternal warmth, stabilizing her cub's core temperature against the lingering chill of the early spring night. Their synchronized breathing creates a slow, harmonious rhythm that matches the tranquil pulse of the surrounding boreal ecosystem. Above them, ancient pines stand sentinel over the sleeping forest, their towering silhouettes swaying gently against a sky dusted with distant stars. These old-growth trees hold the quiet, enduring promise of a changing season, as the frozen grip of winter gradually yields to the vibrant awakening of summer. In the heart of the vast taiga, all creatures rest under the steady, timeless cadence of the wilderness. The low-frequency hum of insects and the distant, resonant call of an owl blend into a soothing natural lullaby. Wrapped in a blanket of green and gold, the young lynx slumbers deeply, secure in the ancient rhythms of the northern woods, completely at peace within the quiet cradle of the night. High above the northern taiga, the summer solstice crowns the boreal forest with a near-endless expanse of golden daylight. Long amber rays pierce the dense, overlapping layers of spruce and pine needles, warming the ancient wood and waking the resinous perfumes trapped within the bark. This profound seasonal shift transforms the dense canopy into a shimmering cathedral of green and gold, where time seems to slow beneath the steady hum of the afternoon. A gentle wind drifts through the high branches, coaxing a soft sighing rustle from the needles overhead. It is a soothing, rhythmic cadence, carrying the crisp, earthy scent of damp organic duff mixed with the sweet fragrance of sun-warmed resin. Far off in the deeper recesses of the timberland, the melodic notes of a hermit thrush ripple through the warm air, answered only by the delicate, vibrating thrum of invisible summer insects hovering in the sunbeams. This vast, acoustically rich environment functions as a finely tuned ecosystem, where every rustle and breath of air resonates with life. The filtered light paints shifting patterns of shadow and brightness across the thick carpet of fallen pine needles, creating a tranquil, secluded world far removed from the wider wilderness. It is an atmosphere of deep, restorative stillness, wrapped in the quiet warmth of a long northern afternoon. Here, beneath the protective arch of the ancient conifers, the forest breathes in a slow, steady rhythm, resting peacefully in the abundance of the summer season. Down upon the needle-strewn forest floor, the sensory landscape deepens into an intricate tapestry of scent and temperature. The young lynx pauses beside a decaying nurse log, pressing its damp, black-nosed leather to the cool, dark wood. Here, a complex cocktail of olfactory data rises from the damp duff, the sharp, antiseptic tang of heated pine resin mingling with the rich, earthy decay of last autumn's foliage. This rich sensory mosaic provides vital information about the surrounding microhabitat, mapping the presence of hidden invertebrates and subterranean life. With ears swiveling forward to catch the ambient hum of insects, the juvenile inhales deeply. Its large nasal cavity, exceptionally well developed for a boreal predator, processes the thermal currents shifting through the understory. Warm pockets of air rise from sun-bleached stones, carrying traces of distant wildflowers, while cooler drafts sink low from the shaded hollows of the mossy roots. Every breath anchors the young cat more firmly to its expanding world, sharpening an awareness forged by millions of years of evolutionary adaptation. The heavy, heat-retaining coat, already beginning its slow transition from the dense winter wool to a lighter summer slate, absorbs the ambient warmth. Resting on its belly, the lynx feels the steady temperature gradient of the soil against its skin. This quiet communion with the heated earth soothes the growing muscles in its limbs, offering a tranquil pause before the next cycle of exploration. Beneath the rustling canopy, wrapped in fragrant breezes, the young predator rests in perfect harmony with the vibrant pulse of the taiga. Rising from the soft duff, The young cat shifts its attention from the symphony of scents to the subtle motion of the understory. A gentle breath of wind drifts through the pines, dislodging a pale, curled birch leaf that flutters down to land softly upon a bed of pine needles. For the juvenile lynx, this drifting target becomes an instant catalyst, awakening the ancient, hardwired geometry of the hunt. Instinct guides the growing body into a classic, low-slung crouch. The biomechanics of the future apex predator begin to align with effortless precision. The heavy shoulders lower, bringing the chest nearly flush against the forest floor, while the hindquarters draw up underneath the pelvis. This tucked posture stores potential energy in the muscular spring of the rear legs, ready to propel the body forward in a silent burst of acceleration. Weight distribution is everything in the deep snows of winter, but in the summer taiga, it serves the art of the ambush. The juvenile spreads its wide, furry paws, natural snowshoes now acting as shock absorbers, evenly across the yielding needles. Every toe pad presses down with measured control to eliminate any sound of snapping debris. With intense, unblinking focus, wide amber eyes lock onto the stationary leaf. The tufted ears pivot forward like twin satellite dishes, filtering out the distant chirping of boreal birds and focusing entirely on the imaginary prey. A slow, deliberate step forward begins. The front right paw moves in absolute synchronization with the rear left, maintaining a smooth, level plane across the spine that prevents any bobbing motion from betraying its approach. The young cat halts, pauses, and rehearses the patient stillness that will one day secure its survival under the high northern canopy. Across the yielding floor of the taiga, locomotion becomes an exercise in utter silence. The young cat presses forward, its physical form exquisitely adapted for absolute stealth. Beneath the thick fur of its limbs lie exceptionally large paws, anatomical marvels designed primarily for winter snows, yet proving equally miraculous upon the summer duff. These broad, heavily furred feet act as natural cushions, spreading the juvenile's growing weight evenly over the intricate lattice of fallen twigs and dry cones. With every step, the dense pads compress the springy bed of needles soundlessly. There is no crack of dry wood, no rustle of displaced debris. The lynx moves like a shadow cast by the declining sun, drifting effortlessly across the terrain. Tendons and ligaments work in quiet harmony, absorbing any residual kinetic energy before it can reach the ground. The oversized paws grip the yielding soil with gentle traction, ensuring that each footfall is placed with deliberate, measured grace. As the young predator glides deeper into the dappled shade, the mechanics of silent travel become second nature. The joints flex and lock with fluid efficiency, allowing the body to flow rather than walk. This exceptional stealth is the hallmark of the lynx lineage, a specialized adaptation refined over millennia of quiet evolution in the deep northern forests. Every movement is calculated, smooth, and entirely unhurried, blending seamlessly with the hushed, tranquil rhythm of the late afternoon wilderness. All around the silent traveler, the northern taiga pulses with the vibrant, low-frequency hum of seasonal abundance. High above the forest floor, where the golden rays of late afternoon strike the resinous needles of the pine canopy, a complex web of insect life stirs the heavy air. Countless pollinators and forest-dwelling invertebrates navigate the sunlit branches, creating a continuous, soothing vibration that resonates through the timber. This steady atmospheric drone acts as a natural lullaby, wrapping the woodland in a warm, acoustic blanket. Interlaced with this insect chorus come the intermittent, melodious calls of resident birds drifting down from the topmost tiers of the evergreens. A distant thrush adds a flute-like note to the breeze, its song fading softly into the sigh of high-altitude winds passing through the boughs. Every element of the ecosystem contributes to a thriving, interconnected sanctuary that nurtures the growing cat. Within this rich habitat, the young lynx pauses, absorbing the chorus through exceptionally sensitive ears tufted with dark, distinct hairs. These specialized black tips function like acoustic antennae, capturing the faintest rustle of hidden life in the underbrush and filtering the ambient forest sounds into a clear, manageable symphony. The damp, earthy duff beneath the pine trees releases a rich tapestry of organic scents, warmed by the long hours of midsummer sunlight. Each breath brings notes of decaying wood, fresh sap, and thriving green flora, anchoring the juvenile deeply within the rhythms of the turning season. Resting quietly in the dappled shade, the young predator remains completely at home in this vast, breathing wilderness, cradled by the gentle, unhurried pulse of the northern forest. The golden shafts of sunlight filtering through the high pine canopy begin to lengthen, stretching long, amber fingers across the needle-strewn floor of the northern taiga. Having spent hours refining its stealthy posture and coordinating its growing limbs, the juvenile lynx feels the natural heaviness of twilight approaching. Its amber eyes blink slowly, heavy with the sweet exhaustion of a productive afternoon. Seeking a secure and comfortable spot, the young cat steps softly toward a broad, moss-covered boulder resting in a quiet clearing. This natural granite perch, warmed by hours of continuous summer heat, releases a gentle, steady warmth that seeps upward into the dense fur of the cat's belly. Mammalian endothermy relies heavily on such microhabitats for passive heat conservation, allowing the growing predator to maintain an optimal body temperature without expending precious metabolic energy. The juvenile curls its muscular frame into a loose crescent, tucking its oversized paws inward beneath its chest. Its distinctive tufted ears twitch once at the fading, flute-like call of a distant thrush, then relax completely as the surrounding forest begins its slow transition toward dusk. The soft, rhythmic sigh of the evening breeze moves gently through the evergreen boughs, carrying with it the cooling, resinous scent of pine sap and damp earth. As the vibrant hum of daytime insects gradually softens into a peaceful twilight hush, the young cat rests its chin upon its forepaws, completely camouflaged by the shifting pattern of dappled shadows and golden light. It breathes in unison with the tranquil wilderness. Every muscle softens, letting go of the day's playful practice, sinking deeper into the quiet, restorative embrace of the waiting northern night. The northern taiga breathes a long, cooling sigh as the summer sun drifts toward the jagged horizon. Along the edge of the forest, a slow-moving stream winds its way through ancient spruce and paper birch, its water deeply stained by cedar roots and fallen needles into the rich color of dark amber. As the daylight softens, the surface of the stream transforms into a mirror of molten gold, catching the final, horizontal rays of dusk. A gentle wind whispers through the canopy, carrying the earthy scent of damp moss and pine resin. The rhythmic, soothing murmur of the current brushes against the riverbanks, blending with the low hum of late summer insects and the fading notes of a distant thrush settling into the branches. From the shadows of a sprawling balsam fir, a juvenile lynx steps out onto the plush velvet green banks. The young feline moves with an innate, liquid grace, placing each oversized paw softly upon the spongy earth. Pausing near the water's edge, the cat lowers its head, large ears flicking forward to capture the varied frequencies of the flowing water. Within the lynx's developing eyes, extraordinary visual adaptations take hold. The vertical slit pupils dilate slightly to gather the diminishing amber light, registering the intricate patterns of ripples and floating debris drifting slowly downstream. This tannin-rich waterway is a vital artery of the taiga ecosystem, cooling the evening air and drawing the quiet life of the forest toward its banks. Bathed in the warm, fading glow, the young predator stands completely still, a silent shadow blending seamlessly into the peaceful twilight. The gentle gurgle of the stream provides a steady, hypnotic acoustic backdrop as the juvenile watches a slow parade of floating pine needles and ripples. Each natural eddy and swirl draws the young predator's undivided attention, teaching the essential economy of motion. In the quiet solitude of the taiga, stillness is not merely a pause, it is an active discipline. The physiological design of the lynx makes this patience possible. Broad, snowshoe-like paws rest securely upon the damp, spongy moss, distributing the cat's weight evenly across the yielding ground. These oversized limbs, covered in thick fur down to the toe pads, act as natural cushions that absorb micro-vibrations from the earth. Beneath the fur, specialized blood vessels regulate temperature against the cooling evening soil, allowing the young hunter to remain anchored and comfortable for long stretches of time. Muscles that are built for explosive acceleration instead lock into a profound, deliberate calm. The juvenile's spine curves in a relaxed yet ready posture, tail still against the dark earth. Every heartbeat slows to match the rhythmic pulse of the moving water. The eyes remain fixed on the liquid amber mirror of the stream, tracking the subtle play of light and shadow without a single twitch of the whiskers. In this timeless sanctuary of the northern forest, the art of the ambush is forged not in the chase, but in the profound, unmoving peace of the waiting. Above the amber-tinted current, a flash of iridescent blue shatters the glassy reflection. A large dragonfly darts across the water, its gossamer wings beating in a dizzying blur of motion. Instantly, the juvenile lynx's amber eyes lock onto the aerial acrobat. This sudden movement triggers an involuntary, ancient cascade of neural impulses, waking the predatory machinery wired deep within the young cat's developing brain. Visual acuity in these northern felines is a marvel of evolutionary design. High concentrations of rod cells in the retina maximize night vision, while a specialized reflective layer behind the light receptors, the tapetum lucidum, bounces incoming photons back through the tissue. This grants the juvenile extraordinary sensitivity to motion in low-light conditions, turning the fading twilight into a clear, high-contrast theater. Without breaking the silence of the mossy bank, the young predator tilts its head. The movement is microscopic, a fluid shifting of focus rather than a clumsy turn. The twitching ears swivel independently, capturing the high-frequency hum of insect wings while tracking the erratic flight path. Every dart and hover is measured by unblinking pupils that dilate to welcome the softening light. This tracking is a crucial neurological exercise. By following the unpredictable trajectories of insects over moving water, the juvenile hones the ocular motor coordination required for tracking swift prey in future seasons. The muscles around the eyes micro-adjust, learning the delicate physics of anticipation. When the dragonfly finally vanishes into the deepening shadows beneath the ferns, the lynx exhales softly. The amber eyes remain fixed on the empty air for a long moment, lingering on the memory of the motion, before the gaze slowly lowers back to the gentle, hypnotic eddies of the stream. With the dragonfly gone, the young cat shifts its attention inward, tuning its awareness to the damp, spongy earth beneath its paws. The innate urge to hunt demands physical expression, and the low-profile stalk begins. Slowly, deliberately, the juvenile drops its chest until it rests flush against the damp, green velvet moss. The long winter guard hairs, still shedding into shorter summer tufts, brush softly against the cool ground. This movement calls upon ancient motor programs encoded in the feline cerebellum, the brain region responsible for balance, precision, and muscular coordination. The juvenile's spine flattens into a long, parallel line with the soil, reducing its visual profile to near zero. Every joint bends with exaggerated care. First, the right forepaw reaches forward, sinking silently into the yielding mud, followed precisely by the left hind limb. In this quiet rehearsal, nature acts as the ultimate tutor. The obstacles along the stream bank, a cluster of drooping ferns, a graying alder twig, a mound of decaying forest litter, become imaginary prey. The young lynx pauses before each obstruction, testing the limits of its patience and muscle memory. Proprioceptors, specialized sensory receptors nestled deep within the muscles and joints, continuously signal the brain regarding limb position, allowing the cat to move without once glancing down at its own paws. A gentle wind ripples through the canopy, carrying the rich, earthy scent of damp peat and pine resin. The lynx blends seamlessly into the shadows, a living shadow mastering the quiet art of concealment along the winding, tannin-dark waters. As the sun slips further below the jagged horizon, a subtle, cooling breath sweeps down from the northern peaks, gliding over the surface of the tannin-stained stream. The heated air of the summer afternoon surrenders to the oncoming night, and with this shift, the damp earth releases a rich, complex bouquet of organic scents. The sharp, resinous aroma of sun-warmed pine needles blends deeply with the cool, mushroom and peat fragrance of the riverbank mud, creating a comforting, earthy perfume that hangs heavy in the quiet air. The juvenile lynx breaks its low-profile posture, rising slowly from the spongy moss. Its muscles, warm and slightly fatigued from the long evening of rehearsal, relax into a gentle stretch. The young cat lets out a soft, rhythmic breath, panting lightly as its body temperature regulates in the cooling breeze. There is no pressing hunger, no urgency tonight, only the vast, soothing rhythm of the taiga settling into rest. Perched on a smooth stone at the water's edge, the feline pauses to drink in the calming atmosphere of the wilderness. Each breath draws in the crisp evening air, stimulating a brain region finely tuned to the subtle chemistry of the forest. The fading amber light mirrors softly off the slow-moving currents, casting gentle, flickering patterns across the cat's thick furred chest. Around it, the daytime hum of insects softens into a steady, hypnotic murmur, mingling with the gentle, liquid gurgle of the stream brushing against ancient roots. In this quiet sanctuary, surrounded by deepening shadows and the peaceful breath of the taiga, the young hunter feels the comforting weight of the wild night wrapping around it like a blanket. Shadows lengthen completely across the water, dissolving the last lingering traces of amber into deep, cooling indigo tones. The surface of the stream becomes a dark mirror, reflecting the quiet emergence of the first pale evening stars overhead. With a slow, fluid motion, the juvenile lynx stretches its long limbs forward, sinking its curved claws deep into a patch of soft, damp moss. It shakes a few stray droplets of river mist from its dense winter coat, a reflexive neuromuscular reset that helps the guard hairs settle into maximum thermal efficiency for the dropping temperature. Turning its undivided attention away from the current, the young cat lifts its broad face toward the surrounding forest. Its large, tufted ears swivel independently, capturing the delicate rustle of wind moving through the higher branches of ancient spruce and balsam fir. The lower trunks are already swallowed by the encroaching velvet dark, creating a vertical labyrinth of safety and stillness. Sensing the natural rhythm of the taiga shifting from twilight vigilance to nocturnal security, the feline begins its ascent. Each footfall is measured and deliberate, utilizing the natural vertical highway of the forest. The gnarled bark of a nearby pine offers a familiar, textured pathway upward into the sheltering boughs, away from the damp coolness of the riverbank. Safe within the embrace of the sturdy branches, the young hunter circles twice before settling its weight onto a wide, moss-cushioned limb, blending seamlessly into the quiet dark of the northern night. Down on the forest floor, the midsummer heat lingers heavily among the damp moss and fallen logs. Seeking relief from the warmth, the juvenile lynx stirs from its shady daybed and stretches. Its growing limbs, lengthening by the week, demand coordination and exercise. Turning away from the underbrush, the young cat approaches the massive trunk of an ancient, towering spruce tree. Instinct guides the feline upward. With a deliberate, measured grace, the lynx extends its paws, testing the grip of its sharp, semi-retractile claws against the deeply furrowed, scaled bark. Every muscle in the shoulder and back engages seamlessly, reflecting months of developing strength and refined proprioception, the internal awareness of body position in space. The climb is a natural progression of muscle memory. Hind legs spring with controlled power, propelling the lightweight predator steadily higher above the ground. As the cat navigates the vertical pathway, the air begins to shift. The stifling humidity of the soil gives way to a cooler, moving current of air filtering through the lower boughs. With each rhythmic stride upward, the forest floor recedes, swapping the dense clutter of ferns for a cleaner, more open vertical highway. The bark feels rough and reliable beneath the pads of the paws, offering secure traction with every placement. Pausing for a quiet moment on a thick, moss-draped lateral branch, the young predator looks down through the layers of green needles, assessing the diminishing shadows below. The ascent is smooth, deliberate, and entirely effortless, a testament to a wild youth maturing swiftly in the heart of the great northern taiga. Moving higher into the upper third of the tree, the juvenile identifies a wide, resin-scented branch sheltered by dense green needles. The platform offers both concealment from potential avian observers and a stable resting surface. The bough stretches horizontally from the central trunk, heavily draped in clusters of dark emerald foliage that filter the golden evening light. Walking carefully along the rough wood, the young cat tests the stability of the timber. This arboreal behavior requires precise balance and confidence, traits honed through months of leaping and exploring the rugged taiga. The branch is broad enough to accommodate the growing predator comfortably, cradled safely against the main axis of the trunk. A rich aroma of warm pine resin and dry bark rises from the wood, mingling with the cooling breeze. The dense canopy overhead acts as a natural sunshade, mitigating the radiant heat of the late-day sun and providing optimal conditions for thermoregulation. Settling into the sheltered alcove, the lynx faces outward toward the open sky, utilizing the elevated vantage point to monitor the vast landscape below while remaining entirely hidden from view. The rustling pine needles murmur softly in the rising air, creating a cocoon of peaceful isolation high above the forest floor. Far below on the humid forest floor, the stagnant summer air holds on to the day's trapped heat, creating a heavy microclimate where biting insects thrive in swarms. But here, suspended dozens of feet above the soil in the upper tiers of the old-growth spruce, the juvenile experiences an entirely different atmosphere. Cooling air currents weave effortlessly through the open needle clusters, offering immediate physiological relief and natural thermoregulation for the warm-furred predator. This strategic elevation serves an evolutionary purpose beyond simple vantage and security. By resting in the canopy, the young cat escapes the dense swarms of midges and mosquitoes that buzz relentlessly near the damp earth. The gentle, continuous breeze sweeping through the high branches acts as an invisible barrier, lifting away unwanted pests and cooling the surface of the dense, insulating coat. Stretching out along the textured timber, the lynx allows its body temperature to slowly recalibrate. The vast expanse of gray fur absorbs the fading warmth of the wood, while the circulating air whisks away excess body heat from the paws and belly. Every breath draws in the crisp, high-altitude oxygen, soothing the muscles after the exertion of the vertical climb. In this elevated haven of moving air and filtered shade, physical recovery becomes effortless, and the heavy eyelids of the young cat begin to droop beneath the soothing lull of the swaying forest. Even as the heavy veil of slumber attempts to claim the young cat, absolute unconsciousness remains deferred. High in the swaying cradle of the spruce, the juvenile's nervous system stays softly attuned to the surrounding wilderness, resting flat against the bark. The lynx is never truly unguarded. A delicate balance of rest and vigilance defines the half-sleep of a developing solitary predator. Atop the wide skull, the prominent black ear tufts, each tipped with stiff hairs that act as acoustic antennae, twitch independently in response to the fading daylight. These specialized tufts funnel high-frequency sound waves directly into the ear canal, allowing the resting cat to map the distant taiga without so much as lifting its chin. A rustling in the fern beds far below, the faint whistle of a foraging jay, or the low hum of a bumblebee drifting past the needle clusters are all quietly catalogued by the half-open amber eyes and acute inner ear. This semi-permeable state of rest is a vital evolutionary adaptation. By maintaining a low-threshold sensory awareness while its muscles repair, the juvenile monitors the complex acoustic landscape of the northern forest. The gentle rustle of pine needles brushing against fur mingles with the ambient symphony of the cooling evening. Vision remains equally calibrated, even through drooping eyelids. Sudden movements across the canopy horizon register instantly upon the retina. The young lynx rests deeply, yet remains intricately connected to the living pulse of the ancient woods, suspended safely between total sleep and quiet, watchful peace. High above the shadowed understory, a gentle evening breeze sweeps across the dense spruce canopy. The current of cool air rustles through the clustered pine needles, whispering softly against the rough scales of the bark. With this steady breath of wind, the heavy, horizontal bough begins to sway in a slow, rhythmic motion, rocking up and down in a natural arc that matches the measured pulse of the taiga. This soothing, pendular movement exerts a profound physical effect on the resting feline. The gentle oscillation acts as a natural cradle, gently easing the tension lingering within the juvenile's rapidly developing muscle fibers. As the branch dips and rises, the cat's flexible spine conforms entirely to the curvature of the wood, absorbing the motion in a fluid, seamless cadence. Vestibular receptors deep within the inner ear register the predictable swaying, sending calming neural signals down the spinal cord and lowering the heart rate closer to a restorative resting frequency. The repetitive motion invites a heavier, more profound stage of sleep. The half-open amber eyes gradually close completely. The ear tufts soften from their upright alertness, and the loose-limbed body grows heavier against the bark. Borne aloft by the ancient tree, cradled by the steady breath of the northern wind, the young predator surrenders fully to the deep, healing quiet of the midsummer dusk. Curled tightly against the rough, fragrant bark, the juvenile tucks its large paws neatly beneath its chest. This compact resting posture minimizes exposed surface area, helping the young predator conserve core body heat while allowing the heavily insulated belly to press flush against the sun-warmed wood. The thick winter coat, now transitioning into a lighter summer profile, traps a microscopic layer of air, creating a soft, insulating cushion between the feline and the rough timber. Twilight slowly envelops the northern forest, painting the endless sea of conifers in deep shades of indigo and violet. High in the secluded quiet of the upper canopy, the peaceful isolation provides absolute security. Ground predators cannot reach this elevated vantage point, and the dense arrangement of overhead needles effectively shields the sleeping cat from the fading amber glow of the midsummer dusk. As night claims the taiga, the juvenile drifts into a profound state of restorative slumber. Rapid eye movement sleep takes hold, essential for processing the day's complex motor learning and cementing the neural pathways required for agile vertical navigation. The occasional subtle twitch of a black-tipped ear or a phantom paw step reveals an active brain synthesizing the sensory lessons of the heights. Beneath the swaying canopy, cradled by ancient branches and wrapped in the cool, resin-scented air, the young lynx rests completely undisturbed, perfectly attuned to the timeless rhythms of the wilderness. Before the sun breaches the eastern horizon, the taiga rests in a deep, hushed stillness. A thick layer of cool mist blankets the forest floor, weaving through the sturdy trunks of ancient pines and resting heavy upon a sea of towering ferns. In this fleeting pre-dawn hour, the heavy summer heat is nothing more than a distant memory, replaced by a refreshing, damp chill that permeates the shadowed woods. Tucked safely beneath the low-hanging boughs of a moss-draped spruce, a juvenile lynx stirs from its slumber. The young cat stretches slowly, extending long, muscular limbs and curving its spine in a quiet, fluid motion. Every movement is deliberate, born of an innate grace. The cool morning air fills its sensitive nostrils with the rich, earthy aromas of damp soil, crushed pine needles, and the faint, sweet scent of nocturnal blossoms. Evolution has shaped this young predator for the quiet majesty of these northern forests. Even in repose, its body is a marvel of specialization. Tufts of dark fur frame its alert face, while prominent, ear-tip tassels stand ready to catch the faintest vibrations in the air. A distant, low-pitched hoot of an owl drifts softly across the clearing, and the juvenile's ears swivel independently toward the sound, mapping the sleeping landscape with effortless precision. With a soft exhale, the young lynx eases out from its resting spot and steps onto the damp moss carpet. The forest around it is gently waking. A slow breeze stirs the rustling leaves high above, while nocturnal insects hum a low, steady lullaby in the undergrowth. Here, in the gentle embrace of the early morning mist, the day begins without rush. Upon the yielding carpet of northern moss, the juvenile begins its slow, deliberate advance. Every step is a masterclass in feline mechanics. Those remarkable, oversized paws, nature's ultimate snowshoes, equally adept at traversing soft summer terrain, expand as they meet the ground. This wide surface area distributes the young cat's growing weight evenly, preventing any heavy sinking into the spongy, saturated earth below. Beneath each thick pad, dense fur acts as a natural cushion, dampening the impact against fallen twigs and pebbled soil. The claws, perfectly retracted into protective sheaths, leave no sudden marks in the emerald green. As the foot descends, it rolls smoothly from heel to toe, testing the firmness of the forest floor before committing its full balance. A gentle breeze brushes through the understory, causing the rustling leaves to whisper above, yet the young predator makes not a single sound. It is a ghost upon the moss, navigating the microtopography of the taiga with effortless grace. Each muscle in the shoulder girdle works in silent harmony, unhindered by rigid collarbones, allowing the forelimbs to glide forward with liquid fluidity. The cool, moisture-laden air clings to the soft fur, heightening the tactile feedback from the sensitive whiskers that sweep gently across the damp fronds. In this quiet sanctuary of mist and shade, the mechanics of absolute stealth become second nature, practiced in the soothing rhythm of the early morning. Freezing in place, the young cat melts into the shadow of a fallen log as the forest acoustic landscape shifts. The pre-dawn air carries a symphony of subtle frequencies, and the juvenile is impeccably equipped to receive them. Atop its head, prominent black ear tufts, stiff hairs extending nearly 2 inches beyond the tips, quiver slightly, acting as biological directional antennas. These specialized plumes catch distant air currents and channel low-frequency vibrations directly down into the external ear canal, magnifying even the faintest rustles. A fading call from a departing boreal owl ripples through the dense pines, followed immediately by the rhythmic, descending trill of a lone nightjar settling into daytime roosting. The lynx's triangular ears swivel independently, turning like twin radar dishes to isolate each acoustic thread from the general ambient drone of waking insects. Every muscle in the neck remains taut yet relaxed, holding the head at precisely the angle that maximizes auditory reception. Sound in the taiga tells a story of movement and distance, mapped effortlessly within the developing brain of the young predator. A beetle navigating dry pine needles sounds like a footfall on gravel, while a distant vole shifting beneath a rotting stump registers with crystal clarity. Without needing to look, the juvenile pinpoints the exact coordinates of the micro-disturbance. The world here is perceived as much through sound as through sight, a vast tapestry of vibrations washing over the sensitive, fur-lined pineye. As the nocturnal chorus slowly dissolves into the quiet prelude of morning, the cat continues to listen, perfectly still, absorbing the rich acoustic information of its ancient home. With the acoustic map of the clearing settled in its mind, the growing cat shifts its attention to the physical discipline of the ambush. Lowering its chest until it nearly brushes the damp earth, the juvenile melts into a classic low-profile posture. The anatomy of a northern hunter is an engineering marvel of quiet compression. Shoulder blades glide smoothly beneath muscular contours, allowing the spine to remain perfectly horizontal and level, avoiding any upward bobbing motion that might betray a silhouette against the pale ferns. Without any real prey in sight, the forest floor becomes a training ground of imagination. A rigid, moss-covered twig resting among the needle litter catches the young lynx's amber gaze. Treating the inanimate branch as a formidable target, the cat begins the slow, deliberate crawl. Every muscle contracts in a precise sequence, shifting weight forward with mathematical grace. The oversized paws, which act as natural snowshoes in the frozen months, now serve as wide, cushioned pads that distribute the body's mass evenly over the yielding substrate, eliminating the snap of a hidden root or the rustle of dry debris. Hindquarters rise slightly, positioning the powerful rear legs for a balanced, coiled spring if the moment should require it. The tail twitches just once, then goes completely still, locked in a horizontal line that acts as a counterweight for balance. For several long moments, the young predator holds the freeze, testing the limits of its own patience and muscular control. The damp air cools the whiskers, which sweep forward to measure the stillness of the surrounding space. There is no rush, no sudden burst of energy, only the quiet, meditative art of becoming invisible against the ancient taiga floor. As the slow turn of the earth continues, the dense white fog that blankets the clearing begins to thin, pulling back its cool, damp veil from the upper branches of the towering pines. In this gentle transition, delicate droplets of morning dew cling heavily to the tips of tall ferns and wild grasses, transforming the shadowed undergrowth into a sprawling tapestry of tiny, suspended prisms. When the very first pale glimmers of dawn light filter down through the dense canopy, these suspended moisture beads catch the pale gold and silver rays, glowing like scattered diamonds across the forest floor. The juvenile lynx pauses amid this luminous haze, completely at home in the quiet northern undergrowth. The ethereal light illuminates the soft, spotted patterns of its thick summer coat, blending seamlessly with the mottled textures of lichen-covered bark and damp soil. Wisps of mist drift lazily between the ancient trunks, caught in the mildest currents of a gentle morning breeze. Through this shifting veil of fog and morning illumination, the young cat moves with an unhurried grace, its senses fully attuned to the awakening world. Every towering fern frond and mossy mound is softened by the pearlescent glow, creating a serene sanctuary of shadow and light. The quiet air feels cool and clean against the skin, carrying the earthy scent of wet pine needles and awakening soil. Bathed in this peaceful twilight before the true heat of the day arrives, the young predator rests for a quiet moment, a harmonious part of the misty taiga landscape. Above the eastern horizon, the deep navy of the night sky softens into amber and rose, signaling the final retreat of the pre-dawn chill. The rising sun spills its first warm rays across the taiga, painting the endless sea of evergreen treetops in shades of burnished gold. The juvenile cat steps lightly onto the surface of a wide, sun-warmed boulder, its granite surface holding the gentle promise of the coming warmth. Pausing atop this natural vantage point, the young lynx extends its forelegs forward in a long, luxurious stretch, flattening its shoulder blades and lengthening its spine to awaken muscles primed for the day's rest. Its oversized paws flex against the ancient stone, claws retracting completely into soft, protective sheaths as the joints loosen. Turning its head toward the vast expanse of the northern forest, the cat looks out over the waking landscape. Its triangular ears swivel effortlessly, catching the rising hum of daytime insects and the distant, fading call of a roosting owl. The morning air begins to lose its heavy dampness, shifting from the crisp chill of the night to the steady, comforting heat of a true summer day. Basking in the golden illumination, the young predator blinks slowly against the bright light, its amber eyes reflecting the serene vastness of the taiga. With a final, content sigh, the cat settles its weight comfortably against the cooling perimeter of the stone, perfectly content within the quiet rhythm of the turning earth. The young lynx pads silently up the weathered stone of a high granite outcrop, each movement deliberate and measured. Broad, heavily furred paws find secure footing on the cool, ancient rock, distributing its weight with effortless grace. This steady upward climb showcases the precise muscular coordination developed over the preceding months of agile navigation through the dense northern forest. The early dawn air remains pleasantly cool against the dense amber and gray summer coat, carrying the fresh, resinous scent of sun-warmed pine needles drifting up from the valley below. There is no urgency in the ascent, no frantic scurrying of dependent cubhood. Every stride reflects a growing physical maturity and an innate understanding of energy conservation across rugged terrain. As the juvenile scales the steep incline, soft stone shifts only momentarily beneath a hind paw before settling firmly into place. The surrounding taiga begins to stir in the gentle, whispering wind, accompanied by the faint, distant melody of early rising birdsong and the low, soothing hum of awakening summer insects. The young feline pauses for a quiet moment, flattening its large, tufted ears to catch the ambient sounds of the waking wilderness, perfectly attuned to the rhythms of an expanding world. Reaching the windswept summit, the feline pauses as the eastern horizon quietly ignites. A profound wash of soft amber and pale rose spills across the sky, dissolving the violet shadows of the receding night. Below this celestial canvas, the endless expanse of the northern boreal forest stretches outward in rolling, uninterrupted waves of deep emerald and slate green. From this elevated vantage point, the sheer scale of the wilderness reveals itself. The taiga unfurls as a vast mosaic of ancient spruce valleys, shimmering peat bogs, and twisting river ribbons that catch the first horizontal rays of daylight. This panoramic perspective engages the young cat's highly developed visual acuity. Its golden eyes track the shifting play of light and shadow across the distant canopy, effortlessly registering the subtle movement of thermal air currents rising from the sun-drenched timberland. In this quiet stillness, the solitary nature of the sub-adult's existence becomes absolute. There are no littermates nearby to initiate playful wrestling, nor is there a maternal presence to anchor its boundaries. The horizon belongs entirely to this single, independent life. The vastness that once served as a mysterious, intimidating nursery now presents itself as an unwritten chapter, an expansive domain waiting to be claimed. Breathing in the crisp, expansive air, the feline stands silhouetted against the glowing dawn, completely self-contained and harmonized with the boundless rhythm of the northern summer. High upon the granite crest, the world transforms from a visual spectacle into an intricate tapestry of sound. The young lynx lowers its broad head, tilting it slightly to the left as a delicate draft flows over the stone. Atop the feline's skull, prominent black ear tufts evolutionary marvels functioning much like directional antennae, twitch and swivel with independent precision. These specialized hairs capture the faint, low-frequency vibrations traveling upward from the valley, channeling the acoustic data directly into the inner ear. Rising through the cooling morning air comes the gentle murmur of wind sighing through distant pine needles, mingling with the erratic, bubbling descant of early morning songbirds beginning their daily territorial claims. Beneath these melodies lies the subtle, subterranean hum of summer insects stirring within the mossy duff far below. The lynx processes this auditory landscape effortlessly, filtering out the background rustle of the taiga to isolate the high-pitched, microscopic squeak of a meadow vole threading its way through subterranean grass tunnels. Simultaneously, the cat's amber eyes adjust to the widening daylight, shifting from sweeping panoramic observation to hyper-focused tracking. The feline retina, densely packed with light-sensitive rod cells and enhanced by a reflective tapetum lucidum, easily registers the minutest flick of a leaf or the sudden, erratic trajectory of a dusting moth across the gorge. Every twitch of whisker and adjustment of gaze demonstrates an extraordinary sensory integration, allowing the subadult to map the invisible contours of life waking in the deep timberland without taking a single forward step. For the first time in its life, the juvenile rests upon the warm stone without the familiar, grounding presence of the mother nearby. There is no scent of her fur lingering on the breeze, no heavy, reassuring weight curled against its flank in the chill of the midnight hours. Yet this solitude carries no sharper edge than the morning air. It feels entirely natural, born from weeks of successful independent movement and a growing, quiet mastery over the surrounding wilderness. This psychological transition from dependent cub to solitary subadult does not arrive with a sudden boundary crossed. Instead, the maternal bond dissolves as softly as morning mist evaporating from the spruce canopy. Over successive hunting cycles, the distance between them simply widened, until the spaces of absence stretched from hours into days. The young lynx has internalized her silent lessons, the careful placement of heavy padded paws upon dry twigs, the patience required to outwait a shifting wind, the geometry of a lethal ambush. Curled low against the granite, the feline tucks its black-tipped tail neatly around its toes. The absence of the mother leaves a vast emotional quiet, but the space is quickly filled by the immense, steady pulse of the taiga itself. No longer an extension of a family unit, the cat is now a singular, self-reliant entity anchored to the landscape. Every breath taken upon the high ridge affirms this newfound autonomy, resting in the quiet realization that the sprawling, amber-lit forest below is entirely its own to navigate, to claim, and to understand. As the sun climbs higher into the pale northern sky, its golden rays strike the ancient granite ridge with a slow, penetrating warmth. The stone, chilled by the lingering breath of the subarctic night, gradually surrenders to the heat, storing thermal energy deep within its crystalline matrix. This gentle warming stirs the surrounding evergreen canopy. The sun-baked mosses release a rich, earthy aroma, mingling with the heavy, balsamic scent of melting pine resin drifting up from the spruce forest below. To the resting cat, this olfactory shift signals a familiar biological rhythm. Like many northern predators, the juvenile lynx adapts its daily energy budget to the changing temperature, transitioning from the active twilight hours into a period of deep physiological conservation. With a long, undulating motion, the feline stretches its limbs luxuriously, extending each front paw before drawing them back in a fluid wave. The thick winter underfur has mostly shed, leaving behind a dense summer coat designed to regulate body temperature efficiently under the high-latitude sun. Finding a shallow, natural indentation in the sun-warmed stone, the young cat settles into the contours of the rock. The granite radiates a steady, comforting heat against its belly, easing the muscles after hours of silent vigilance. Heavy eyelids drift closed, though large tufted ears continue to twitch involuntarily at the faint hum of summer insects and the rustle of wind through the needles. Guard hairs catch the amber light, shimmering softly as the sub-adult drifts into a state of light, restorative repose high above the quiet taiga. The resting posture gradually softens as the morning light deepens into a clearer gold. Without fully stirring from its warm granite hollow, the young lynx lifts its head once more, amber eyes blinking open to survey the intricate network of game trails threading through the lower forest. From this elevated vantage point, the vast northern expanse reads like an open map of opportunity. Below, pale ribbons of beaten earth wind between dense stands of black spruce and trembling aspen. These ancient corridors, carved by generations of migratory hooves and foraging paws, represent the lifeblood of the taiga ecosystem. The juvenile's gaze tracks the branching pathways as they descend into the shadowed valleys, noting the subtle shifts in vegetation that signal hidden streams and moist and fern-carpeted depressions where prey species frequently gather. This deliberate scanning is more than idle curiosity. It is an exercise in territorial cognition. The subadult's brain processes the visual landscape, calculating distances, evaluating cover, and mentally mapping the topography for future foraging excursions. Every ridge, swale, and clearing is catalogued, laying the vital groundwork for upcoming hunts and the eventual establishment of a permanent, self-sustaining home range. As a gentle breeze sweeps up the slope, carrying the sharp scent of damp earth and crushed pine needles, the young cat remains perfectly still. There is no sudden urge to descend, no anxious pacing that once accompanied the earliest days of independence. Instead, a quiet confidence settles into the feline's breathing, harmonizing with the vast, peaceful rhythm of the summer wilderness. High above the northern taiga, a gentle wind breathes through the mixed forest, carrying the crisp, earthy scent of approaching frost. The boreal canopy, once a uniform sea of summer green, is undergoing a profound and luminous transformation. Aspen leaves turn to spun gold and rustling copper, catching the slanting rays of the late afternoon sun, while the dark, steadfast evergreens stand in quiet contrast against the blazing colors. Beneath this glowing canopy moves a silent sentinel. Approaching young adulthood, the lynx possesses a newly robust frame, broader across the chest and longer in the limb than it was just a few months ago. Its amber eyes scan the changing landscape with a calm, heightened awareness, taking in every subtle shift in shadow and light. As the seasons turn, the cat's biology responds in tandem with the forest. Beneath its visible form, a complex physiological rhythm is already underway. The short, reddish hairs of the summer coat are slowly being pushed out by a thick, dense underfur and longer guard hairs, designed to trap warm air against the skin. This emerging winter pelt will soon provide vital thermal insulation against the deep chills of the northern winter. For now, patches of the lighter coat mingle with the grayer tones of the new winter growth, creating a mottled camouflage that mirrors the speckled pattern of the forest floor. With slow, deliberate grace, the young feline pauses upon a mossy ridge, letting the soft sigh of the pines wash over the clearing. The world around it slows down, resting in the quiet stillness of the autumn afternoon. This intricate transition is driven by diminishing daylight, a silent cue registered by the pineal gland deep within the cat's brain. As the autumn days shorten, hormone levels shift, triggering the hair follicles to shed the coarse, heat-releasing summer fibers. In their place, a miraculous double-layered coat begins to flourish. The new underfur grows exceptionally dense and fine, functioning as a microscopic trap for body heat, sealing the warmth against the skin like natural down. Rising through this insulating cushion are the new guard hairs, elongated, hollow shafts that shed moisture and deflect the bitter wind. Together, this growing thermal shield will eventually allow the lynx to endure sub-zero temperatures without losing vital energy to the cold. Nature even paints the new fur with precision. The tips of these winter hairs take on a frosted silver and gray hue, blending seamlessly with the granite stones and pale lichens of the northern taiga. This subtle shift in pigmentation erases the warmer, reddish tones of July, replacing them with a muted palette designed for upcoming snowy landscapes. Every follicle works in a quiet symphony of adaptation. As the young cat rests its weight upon a cool stone, a stray tuft of spent summer fur detaches, caught and carried away by a passing breeze. The lynx does not stir, simply feeling the cool air settle slightly closer to its skin where the denser undercoat is still emerging. It is a slow, patient unveiling, preparing the young predator for the quiet, frozen months ahead. The forest floor has transformed into a fragile, rustling mosaic of fallen aspen leaves and brittle pine twigs. For a young apex predator, this seasonal carpet presents an immediate acoustic challenge. Every footstep threatens to snap a hidden twig or send a cascade of dry foliage whispering across the ground, broadcasting a warning to every prey species within listening distance. To conquer the noise, the young lynx instinctively adjusts its locomotion. It lengthens its stride, relying on specialized paw mechanics that set it apart from other felines. Its large, snowshoe-like paws possess a vast surface area, naturally distributing its weight across the shifting, unstable debris. Instead of placing the foot down flat, the cat initiates a slow, deliberate muscle contraction, rolling each heavy paw outward from the heel to the toes. With precise neuromuscular control, the lynx flattens its broad toes, feeling the texture of the forest floor beneath the thick tufts of insulating winter fur that cushion its footpads. This natural padding acts as a biological silencer, absorbing the initial impact against the hard ground. When a stray twig lies hidden beneath the golden leaves, the cat's sensitive mechanoreceptors register the increased resistance instantly. The muscles in the shoulder flex, lifting the limb in a smooth, fluid arc rather than crushing the obstacle beneath its weight. The gentle wind stirs the canopy above, sending a fresh shower of copper-colored leaves floating downward. Masked by this ambient rustle, the feline pauses, balancing its entire weight on 3 limbs while the 4th hovers just millimeters above a bed of crackling oak leaves. It breathes slowly, letting the rhythmic sigh of the pine boughs wash over the clearing, perfectly attuned to the delicate mechanics of silent passage in a world that listens closely for the slightest sound. As the late afternoon light deepens into amber, the acoustic landscape of the taiga shifts. High above, the final migratory calls of geese drift down through the cooling air, a faint, resonant sound fading into the vast northern sky. Closer to the ground, the forest sings and whispers. Every gentle breeze sends dry aspen leaves sliding across one another in a papery cascade, creating a continuous, rustling white noise that masks the smaller, more vital sounds below. To navigate this acoustic maze, the young lynx relies on evolutionary architecture far more sophisticated than mere stealth. Perched atop its skull are prominent black ear tufts, marvels of biological engineering that act as acoustic funnels. These stiff hairs do not merely add to the cat's striking silhouette, they catch high-frequency directional sound waves and channel them downward into the ear canal, amplifying the faint rustles of hidden prey. The feline freezes, turning its head with slow, deliberate precision. Its inner ears isolate the complex frequencies of the forest floor, effortlessly filtering out the ambient sigh of the pine boughs and the broader scrape of wind-driven foliage. Beneath a thick blanket of russet leaves 20 paces ahead, a subtle vibration registers. It is the rhythmic scratching of a foraging vole, shifting seeds beneath the debris. The lynx tilts its head slightly, triangulating the exact distance through binaural hearing. The acoustic shadow cast by its broad skull helps pinpoint the source with millimeter accuracy, turning the noisy autumn floor into a detailed map of hidden potential. The young cat melts onto a low, moss-cushioned mound, its patterned coat dissolving seamlessly into the mottled interplay of long shadows and golden autumn light. This is the amber hour, when the sun dips low beneath the evergreen canopy, painting the mixed forest in rich hues of bronze and ochre. Here, resting on the damp, velvet-soft earth, the feline becomes a part of the landscape itself, its newly thickening fur, a subtle blend of silver gray and winter-brown hairs, catches the slanted rays, absorbing the glow rather than reflecting it. Perched in absolute stillness, the lynx conserves its energy while remaining acutely aware of the world around it. Its large, amber eyes track the slow descent of a stray aspen leaf drifting lazily through the cooling air. Below, the forest floor holds its breath. The subterranean warmth of the earth rises in faint, earthy mist, carrying the rich scent of damp loam, fallen pine needles, and the hidden life scurrying beneath the debris. Every muscle in the cat's powerful frame is relaxed yet poised, a masterclass in feline patience. The lynx does not chase the shifting light, nor does it rush the gathering dusk. It simply observes, blending breath with the quiet rhythm of the taiga. As the shadows stretch longer and deeper across the russet carpet, the young predator waits out the fading day, cradled by the tranquil, breathing woods as evening begins its slow and peaceful descent. As the final slivers of sunlight slip beneath the dark timberline, the ambient temperature begins its steady, nocturnal decline. A gentle wind sweeps through the clearing, carrying the crisp, sharp edge of impending frost. In response to this thermal drop, tiny erector pili muscles beneath the lynx's skin involuntarily contract, lifting the newly grown winter guard hairs to trap a crucial layer of insulating air against its body. This physiological mechanism maximizes heat retention as the taiga transitions from twilight to deep night. Finding refuge among the sprawling, exposed roots of an ancient evergreen, the young cat curls its body into a compact, protective oval. It tucks its sensitive nose beneath the plush fur of its chest and sweeps its heavily furred tail across its paws to shield them from the cold ground. The thick pads of its feet, densely insulated with coarse winter fur, require careful preservation against the approaching freeze. The forest sounds soften around it. High in the canopy, the pine trees sigh a long, rhythmic breath in the cooling breeze, while a distant owl calls out across the darkening valley. The dry, rustling leaves of the afternoon grow still, dampened by the forming dew that glistens like stardust on the forest floor. Completely hidden within its earthen alcove, the young lynx lets its breathing slow to match the tranquil pulse of the woods. Surrounded by the scent of pine resin and rich soil, the resilient predator yields to the deep, restorative quiet of the northern night, resting securely beneath the shifting constellations. The sun dips low beneath the jagged crest of the taiga, painting the vast boreal canopy in muted shades of pale lavender and dying amber. High above the rocky ridges, the last bruised rays of daylight cling briefly to the topmost needles of ancient black spruce before surrendering to the encroaching dusk. With this final retreat of solar warmth, an immediate and profound atmospheric shift takes hold of the forest. The ambient temperature plummets with startling speed, a thermodynamic freefall characteristic of the northern autumn. In a matter of minutes, the residual heat absorbed by the earth throughout the afternoon bleeds upward into the thinning atmosphere. Moisture lingering upon the decaying forest floor and clinging to the damp bark of fallen timber freezes almost instantly. Microscopic droplets of water vapor, suspended in the still evening air, nucleate upon contact with exposed surfaces, forming delicate, crystalline needles of frost. Across the quiet landscape, a silent transformation occurs. Silvery crusts of ice bloom rapidly across cushions of beard lichen and wrap around the gnarled, exposed roots of conifers like fragile, shimmering lace. The wind dies down to a gentle, wandering breath, carrying the sharp, clean scent of approaching ice. Leaves that had rustled softly just moments before now grow stiff and brittle, their cellular walls rupturing gently as the frost penetrates their veins. In this fragile borderland between day and night, the forest holds its breath. The sudden chill signals a crucial physiological trigger for the wildlife inhabiting the rugged terrain, initiating the deep, restorative metabolic slowdown that will carry them through the long, freezing hours ahead. Upon the massive, ancient granite slabs, the rapid freeze paints a masterwork of monochrome beauty. Delicate white ice crystals form instantaneously, branching outward in intricate geometric lattices that follow the natural contours of the silvery lichen, where the moss retains a faint trace of midday moisture. Tiny needles of frost sprout in ordered rows, transforming the rugged boulders into a glistening, frosted sculpture under the descending twilight. Exposed roots of black spruce and dwarf birch, polished by decades of weather, catch the lingering lavender light through a newly spun glaze. Every pore and fissure of the stone landscape seals beneath an expanding armor of microcrystals. This sudden deposition of frost releases a subtle, latent heat into the air, a microscopic thermodynamic adjustment as water transitions from liquid to solid state. The rocks, once porous and welcoming to the touch, become slick, cold expanses of mineral and ice. The visual spectrum of the taiga narrows gracefully. Greens and deep browns recede, swallowed by an encroaching palette of slate gray, silver, and pale white. The forest floor appears dusted with powdered glass, catching the last dim illumination of the western horizon and reflecting it back in a quiet, diffused glow. It is a silent alchemy of temperature and humidity, shaping a sterile yet breathtaking domain. In this crystalline quietude, the physical world hardens, setting the stage for the long nocturnal hours where conservation of energy reigns supreme, and every surface wears the heavy, insulating blanket of winter's vanguard. Navigating this newly chilled expanse, the young lynx steps with measured, deliberate grace. Its paws make barely a sound upon the frozen stone, thanks to broad pads thickly furred against the cold. Beneath this quiet movement lies a sophisticated biological transformation, the complete emergence of its winter pelt. The cat's recent autumn molt has finished its vital work, replacing the sparse, coarse hairs of summer with an extraordinarily dense, multi-layered coat. Close to the skin, a thick mat of fine, crimped underfur traps a microscopic layer of air, utilizing the insulating properties of static warmth. Overpinning this plush foundation are the longer, hollow guard hairs, which act as a weather-resistant canopy. These specialized guard hairs repel moisture while deflecting the biting evening drafts that sweep across the open ridge. As the ambient temperature plummets, tiny erector pili muscles beneath the skin contract involuntarily, lifting the fur just a fraction of a millimeter. This piloerection maximizes the loft of the coat, creating a deeper thermal barrier that locks the cat's metabolic heat safely within its silhouette. Even the lynx's exceptionally wide facial ruff, now thick and luxurious, bolsters the system of thermoregulation, shielding the sensitive blood vessels around the jaw and ears from the invasive chill. With every breath, the cat adapts effortlessly to the sub-zero frontier, its physiology finely tuned by generations of taiga survival. Wrapped in this living insulation, the young predator feels virtually untouched by the descending frost, moving through the monochrome landscape as a self-contained ember of quiet, efficient warmth. Leaving the exposed ridge behind, the young lynx follows an ancient instinct for habitat selection, guided by the pressing need to minimize heat loss through convection. As the wind gathers force, sweeping low across the frosted crest, the cat seeks a microclimate that offers physical refuge from the draft. It threads its way carefully down the slope, pausing to test the air with a damp, highly sensitive nose that detects the subtle scent of stagnant, protected stone. Ahead lies a deep fissure, a secure cleft tucked tightly between two massive granite slabs. This natural masonry acts as an effective thermal sink. Throughout the afternoon, the dense stone absorbed the meager rays of the autumn sun, and now, as the night hardens, it slowly releases that residual warmth back into the shadowed air. The configuration of the rocks forms a natural windbreak, shielding the cat from the convective cooling that strips heat from the body surface. Stepping into the narrow recess, the lynx lowers its frame, testing the dimensions of the stony alcove. The granite walls embrace its flanks, fitting its body as if sculpted for this exact purpose. By selecting this sheltered microhabitat, the predator dramatically reduces its exposure to the plunging ambient temperatures, allowing its physiological systems to transition safely into a state of resting conservation. Outside the sanctuary of the stone cleft, the forest soundscape undergoes a profound transformation. As the mercury plunges, the familiar summer frequencies vanish, leaving behind an acoustic realm shaped by the physics of cold air. The faint, persistent hum of insects that once populated the understory is entirely gone, silenced by the frost. Sound travels differently now. Cold air is denser, muffling distant noises while sharpening every dry, hollow rustle near at hand. The canopy joins in this quiet shift. The breeze no longer carries the rustle of supple, green leaves, but instead pulls a dry, brittle sigh through the rigid needles of the pines. Every branch sounds hollow, stripped of its moisture and frozen to the core. High above, tiny frost crystals on the exposed twigs snap with microscopic, glassy fractures, too quiet for most ears, yet registering clearly in the acute chambers of the resting cat's skull. Far across the darkening valley, the first distant call of a great horned owl drifts through the timber. The low, resonant hoot rolls easily over the chilled landscape, unhindered by the sparse vegetation and low humidity of the autumn evening. Inside the granite alcove, the young lynx rests its chin upon its forepaws, letting these steady, muted tones wash over it. The transition of the woods is complete. The wild symphony of the growing season has yielded to the hushed, minimalist cadence of the taiga night, wrapping the resting predator in a deep and restorative quiet. Within the sheltered embrace of the granite cleft, the young lynx begins the final, vital phase of its nocturnal routine. To survive the dropping temperatures of the taiga, the cat instinctively curls its muscular body into a tight, compact sphere. This classic feline posture minimizes exposed surface area, drastically reducing radiant heat loss through the skin. Tucking its thick, furry paws neatly beneath its chest, the lynx brings its heavily furred tail around to drape gracefully over its wet-kissed nose. This natural breathing baffle preheats the frigid night air before it enters the respiratory tract, an elegant physiological adaptation that protects sensitive lung tissues from the biting cold. As sleep takes hold, metabolic rates slow down, shifting the body into an energy-conserving torpor state typical of boreal predators during seasonal transitions. The steady, rhythmic rise and fall of the lynx's flanks match the tranquil cadence of the forest outside. With each breath, the heavy, double-layered winter coat fluffs microscopically, trapping a layer of warm air close to the skin and sealing out the drafty whispers of the granite walls. Outside, the frost continues its quiet spread across the lichen, but inside the stone alcove, time slows to a gentle, restorative halt. The distant, resonant hoots of the owl fade into the background, merging with the soothing cadence of the cold night air. Securely insulated against the elements, the young predator rests deeply, banking its internal warmth and resting its acute senses for the coming dawn. As the bruised violet of dusk settles deep into the taiga, a heavy stillness gathers beneath the boughs of an ancient pine. Here, curled within the sheltered cradle of moss-covered roots, a young adult lynx stirs from its daytime slumber. This is no longer the dependent juvenile of winters past, but a sovereign territorial owner, operating entirely on its own for the first time. With a slow, fluid undulation, the cat stretches, extending limbs dense with newly acquired muscle and tipped with broad, furred snowshoe paws that once served as awkward tools of clumsy youth. Now, they are instruments of silent, deadly grace. The lynx's autumn coat has thickened into a luxurious, silvery gray vestment, heavily barred with dark spots that blur seamlessly into the dimming shadows of the forest floor. Framing its alert face are prominent facial ruffs, specialized acoustic mirrors designed to funnel the faintest rustlings of the understory straight to internal ears topped by black, tufted tips. The air is crisp, carrying the sharp, clean fragrance of pine resin and cold stone. An autumn breeze whispers through the needle-laden canopy, stirring a soft, rhythmic rustling of fallen needles. Rising gracefully, the cat shakes out the lingering stiffness of rest, its amber eyes catching the fading twilight with calm, unblinking authority. There is no hesitation in its posture, no anxious search for a maternal guide. Every breath draws in the rich, earthy scent of a newly claimed home range, a vast, rugged sanctuary defined by deep granite ridges and silent valleys, fully integrated into the ancient rhythms of the boreal forest. The lynx turns its gaze toward the boundary line, ready to step forward and imprint its presence upon the wilderness. Leaving the shelter of the ancient pine, the feline moves steadily toward the outer edge of its newly established domain. Its paws make no sound upon the forest floor, navigating a complex labyrinth of lichen-draped boulders and dense stands of towering timber. In the quiet expanse of the northern taiga, space is the ultimate currency. Eurasian lynx are solitary predators, requiring vast, uninterrupted home ranges to secure a reliable density of prey, primarily roe deer and hares, through the lean months ahead. By maintaining exclusive control over square kilometers of rugged terrain, the solitary cat prevents overhunting and avoids unnecessary, costly conflicts with neighboring rivals. Territorial spacing acts as an invisible yet rigid architecture across the landscape, an ecological grid where every ridge and valley has a designated guardian. The lynx glides effortlessly between birch trunks and granite blocks, its path deliberate and unhurried. Each ridge crossed reinforces the invisible borders of ownership, defining a self-contained world shaped by survival and independence. The feline steps purposefully out of the shadows, drawn toward the massive, ancient pine tree that stands sentinel at the absolute perimeter of its range. This towering patriarch of the forest serves as a vital bulletin board in the silent language of the taiga. Eurasian lynx possess specialized sebaceous glands located on their cheeks and near the base of their tails, packed with complex chemical compounds that act as invisible signatures. Approaching the deeply furrowed bark, the cat pauses, lifting its head high. It stretches its neck forward, pressing the side of its face firmly against the rough, amber-scented resin. With slow, deliberate sweeps, the lynx rubs its cheeks along the trunk, depositing biological oils that broadcast vital data to any passing conspecific. This meticulous cheek rubbing conveys precise information regarding the cat's sex, physiological condition, and exact reproductive status, all without the need for a physical confrontation. Following this tactile deposition, the lynx turns and adopts a characteristic posture against the base of the same monumental tree. It directs a fine spray of urine onto the elevated bark, a fluid rich in volatile organic compounds that will linger in the cool autumn air for days, defying the elements. In the vast, sparse ecosystem of the northern forest, these olfactory messages maintain the invisible boundaries of the territory with quiet efficiency. Having completed the ritual, the lynx tilts its head, breathing in deeply to sample its own lingering trace alongside the ambient scents of the woods. The task is finished, the sovereign claim renewed against the fading light, leaving the forest tranquil and secure. With the boundary marked, The lynx stands utterly still beneath the darkening boughs, transforming into a statue of pure, patient attention. It lifts its broad head toward the open sweep of the valley, tilting its ears forward to catch the subtle acoustic currents of the evening. Rising proudly from the tips of those wide ears are the characteristic black tufts, stiff hairs that act much like miniature directional antennae. These specialized tufts funnel high-frequency sound waves directly into the ear canal, amplifying the faintest rustles of the understory and sharpening the cat's auditory map of the northern forest. The ambient sounds of the taiga shift in the crisp autumn breeze. Far across the darkening basin, a hollow wooden knock echoes through the cooling air as a late-working woodpecker tests the timber. Beneath this, a low, resonant vibration travels upward through the soil and into the cat's sensitive paw pads, carrying the distant, melancholic cadence of a wolf pack navigating a neighboring ridge. The lynx processes these overlapping acoustic layers with absolute calm, its dark eyes scanning the shadows below without a single nervous twitch. Every auditory cue is weighed and categorized, confirming that the surrounding expanse remains quiet and undisturbed. Its acute hearing forms an invisible perimeter far wider than any scent can reach, ensuring the solitary owner stays perfectly attuned to the shifting dynamics of the ecosystem. The forest whispers its secrets across the miles, and the listening cat absorbs them all, secure in the quiet dominance of its newly claimed domain. Leaving the shelter of the boundary tree, the lynx ascends toward the jagged granite spine of the ridge, where the forest gives way to exposed stone and wind-scoured earth. Here, the autumn breeze sweeps more freely, carrying the crisp scent of chilled lichen and ancient rock. Navigating this elevated terrain demands absolute precision, for a single misplaced step upon the frost-dusted stones could betray the traveler's passage to the valley below. The cat responds with effortless balance and fluid, measured motion. Its movement is a masterclass in silent locomotion, designed to conquer rugged landscapes without a sound. Beneath its muscular frame, oversized paws act as natural snowshoes in winter, but tonight they serve as specialized cushions. Broad and densely furred, these expansive pads compress the layer of dry fallen leaves and pine needles with gentle, distributed weight, absorbing every potential crunch. The heavy fur between the toes muffles contact against the cold stone, allowing the predator to flow over the uneven ground like running water. Every muscle in the shoulder girdle works in smooth harmony, sliding beneath the thick winter coat with zero friction. The cat places each hind foot precisely into the impression left by the forefoot, reducing its environmental footprint to a single, continuous line of shadow. This economy of movement conserves precious energy while maximizing stealth across the perimeter of its domain. As the granite rises steeper, the lynx adjusts its stride, leaning into the slope with calm, unhurried grace. It masters the terrain through quiet confidence, an integrated part of the wild landscape. As complete darkness descends upon the northern taiga, the sharp autumn breeze softens into a gentle, settling breath. The lynx reaches the highest point of the granite spine and pauses, turning its broad face toward the valley below. Stretching out beneath the starlit canopy lies its newly claimed home range, a vast, silent expanse of dark pines and shadowed ravines, now marked and secured as its own domain. Seeking shelter from the dropping temperatures, the cat descends into a protected rock cleft nestled among the ancient stones. This natural stone crevice offers a secure vantage point, shielding the predator from the open wind while providing a clear view across the perimeter. With slow, deliberate grace, the lynx turns in a tight circle, pressing down a bed of dry moss and fallen needles. It settles into a compact, curled resting posture. The thick tail wraps neatly over its nose to conserve body heat, while the oversized paws tuck close against the warm chest. enveloped in the clean, grounding fragrance of pine resin and cold stone. The solitary hunter relaxes every muscle. Its breathing deepens into a slow, rhythmic cadence that matches the quiet pulse of the forest. Fully integrated into the ancient rhythms of the wild, the sovereign cat drifts into deep, peaceful sleep, trusting in the silent strength of its newly established boundaries. A profound, heavy gray stretches across the northern taiga, mirrored perfectly in the dark, stagnant water of the forest pond. The clouds hang impossibly low, heavy with the weight of the season's first true storm, holding the landscape in a breathless, waiting pause. Not a single ripple disturbs the glass-like surface of the water, and the surrounding walls of ancient spruce stand like silent sentinels against the bruised sky. Into this stillness steps an adult lynx, a solitary ghost moving with effortless grace along the shadowed shoreline. Suddenly, the cat halts. Its forward momentum ceases instantly, anchored by an invisible change in the world. The lynx's ears, tipped with dark, sensitive tufts that act like acoustic antennae, twitch slightly toward the heavy sky. Deep within the delicate architecture of the inner ear, specialized mechanoreceptors register a sudden, subtle drop in barometric pressure. The atmospheric weight is shifting, signaling the urgent arrival of winter. This deep sense of pressure is felt not just in the air, but throughout the entire forest ecosystem. The wind has died completely, leaving behind a profound, unnatural hush. Distant creaking branches fall silent. The soft rustle of dry pine needles beneath large, snowshoe-like paws is the only sound breaking the void, accompanied by the subtle settling of damp forest duff. The lynx stands motionless by the edge of the dark pond, absorbing the quiet message carried on the thinning air. Every instinct hones in on the coming transition, as the great northern wilderness holds its collective breath, waiting for the first white flake to drift downward through the boughs. A deep, velvety quiet settles over the evergreen canopy, extinguishing even the faintest whispers of the breeze. This acoustic isolation is total. The familiar chorus of distant ravens and the chatter of red squirrels have vanished entirely, swallowed by the dense, moisture-laden atmosphere. Sound waves struggle to travel through the heavy, sinking air, leaving the taiga wrapped in an undisturbed cocoon of absolute stillness. In this vast expanse of quiet, the lynx relies on specialized physical architecture to interpret the sleeping landscape. Atop the cat's broad head stand prominent black ear tufts, remarkable evolutionary instruments composed of stiff, dense hair. These vertical pennants act as acoustic funnels, capturing microscopic sound waves drifting up from deep valleys and far-off ridges. They amplify high-frequency vibrations, allowing the solitary hunter to isolate the tiniest rustle beneath the snow crust or the faint creak of distant settling timber. With slow, deliberate precision, the lynx pivots its head slightly. The left tuft tilts toward a hollow in the granite rocks, while the right sweeps the shadowed tree line. Every subtle nuance of the environment is mapped through sound alone, turning the silent forest into a rich tapestry of tactile information. The cat's muscles remain entirely relaxed, conserving precious metabolic energy while its auditory senses stay wide awake, tuned to the delicate frequencies of a changing world. Beneath the overarching shadow of the ancient spruce, the lynx turns its attention inward, beginning an elaborate ritual of preparation. The autumn molt is now entirely complete, replaced by a magnificent winter coat that has reached its absolute peak of density. This pelage is a marvel of evolutionary design, forged through months of gradual shedding to withstand the harshest sub-zero extremes. A dense, silvery gray undercoat forms a plush, impenetrable barrier against the cold, while the longer, coarser guard hairs overlay this foundation with a hollow, air-filled structure that prevents wind and moisture from reaching the skin. With slow, sweeping strokes of its rough tongue, the cat meticulously grooms every square inch of its limbs and flanks. This rhythmic licking does more than clean the fur. It aligns the microscopic cuticles of the individual hairs in a precise, uniform direction. By smoothing the coat into a sleek, interlocking mosaic, the lynx traps millions of tiny, microscopic pockets of stagnant air close to its body. These trapped air spaces serve as a supreme thermal buffer, utilizing the insulating properties of still air to lock in core metabolic heat and shield the body from the dropping ambient temperature. Every motion is unhurried, measured, and deeply deliberate. As the tongue glides over the thick silver ruff framing the jaw, the cat's breathing slows in tandem with its resting heart rate. The dense fur shimmers softly in the dim pre-dawn twilight, a heavy mantle of frost-resistant armor perfectly tuned to the coming winter. Settling deeper into the shadowed earth, the lynx wraps its heavily furred tail around its paws, sealing out the final whispers of the autumn wind as the forest holds its breath. Leaving the security of the shadowed earth behind, the solitary feline rises with a fluid, liquid grace, its muscles uncoiling like springs released from tension. It abandons the exposed ridgeline where the heavy air presses down with increasing weight. Every step across the damp, moss-carpeted forest floor is calculated for absolute efficiency, utilizing the strict economy of motion that defines a prime territorial adult. There are no wasted gestures, no superfluous bounds. Each massive, snowshoe-like paw is placed with quiet precision upon the damp duff, distributing the cat's weight so evenly that even the fallen pine needles barely whisper beneath its tread. The lynx moves downslope, away from the drafts that sweep across the stagnant edges of the gray pond. It navigates through a labyrinth of granite boulders and fallen timber, seeking a microhabitat shielded from the impending atmospheric shift. Ahead lies the upturned root system of an ancient, centuries-old spruce, a natural cavern carved into the earth where the giant tree once fell. The tangled mass of roots and packed soil forms a sturdy, protective overhang, creating a secluded hollow completely sheltered from the open sky. Ducking beneath the low wooden ceiling, the cat steps into the dim alcove. The air here is noticeably stiller, holding the earthy scent of decaying cedar and ancient stone. It is an ideal sanctuary from the elements, offering a natural thermal pocket just inches above the forest floor. Here, away from the chilling draft of the valley, the lynx prepares to wait out the brewing storm in profound, restorative peace. Within the dim sanctuary of the upturned roots, the lynx begins its descent into profound repose. It sinks into a bed of damp velvet moss and dry, fragrant earth, consciously reducing its exposed surface area against the chill. The cat flows into a tight, compact sphere, drawing its hind legs inward toward the warmth of its belly. With deliberate care, it folds its heavy forepaws together beneath its chest and tucks its cold nose securely beneath the lush, black-tipped brush of its tail. This classic nocturnal curl minimizes the body's thermal footprint, blanketing the sensitive extremities in fur and shielding the vital organs from the creeping frost. As the heavy air outside settles into a deeper, breathless weight, the lynx's physiological engine shifts gears. Its respiration slows into a steady, measured rhythm, deep and even against the quiet floor. In this state of metabolic conservation, the heart rate drops, husbanding every precious calorie of energy for the arduous hunt ahead. The dense double coat, thickened by months of autumn molt, acts as an impenetrable thermal barrier, trapping a layer of warm air close to the skin while shedding the dampness of the impending storm. Every hair shaft aligns to lock out the cold. In the profound hush beneath the ancient spruce, the wild feline becomes one with the earth, resting in absolute, silent equilibrium as the world holds its breath for the winter's first design. Across the vast expanse of the northern taiga, a profound stillness takes hold, as if the forest itself has ceased to breathe. Overhead, the heavy charcoal gray clouds hang lower, heavy with moisture and waiting to release the season's inaugural snow. The stagnant water of the dark forest pond mirrors the leaden sky, perfectly still, reflecting the silhouetted pillars of ancient spruce and weathered granite without a single ripple. Even the faint lapping of the water against the muddy bank has faded into nothingness, swallowed by the accumulating hush of the barometric shift. Every living thing in the watershed, from the voles tucked deep within their subnivean tunnels to the great owls roosting high in the canopy, seems suspended in an invisible amber of anticipation. Within the sheltered sanctuary of the roots, the resting lynx remains a master of this quiet world. Though its body is still, conserving metabolic energy in deep repose, its sensory awareness stays tuned to the subtle language of the woods. The long, black tufts on the tips of its ears twitch involuntarily at the slightest shift in air pressure, acting as delicate biological antennae that register the infinitesimal changes occurring in the atmosphere. The thick, pale whiskers mapping the darkness around its muzzle detect the microscopic cooling of the draft filtering through the roots. The taiga pauses, holding its collective breath in the heavy, metallic air. There is no wind, no rustle of needles, only the patient, steady heartbeat of the wildcat echoing softly against the moss, anchored deeply in the quiet earth as the first white flakes begin their long, silent descent. The deep taiga draws a quiet breath as the pale light of dawn filters through the high canopy, painting the forest in shades of slate and silver. Crisp frost settles over the understory, turning every remaining sliver of golden aspen foliage into a delicate sculpture of ice. In a sheltered niche beneath the roots of an ancient cedar, the adult lynx blinks open amber eyes, undisturbed by the biting chill. This solitary feline is a masterwork of seasonal adaptation. Beneath its chin, a dense ruff of fur flares outward, while a newly thickened winter coat seals in body heat with millions of insulating guard hairs. The cat stretches, extending limbs built for endurance, and steps lightly out onto the frozen moss. Every movement is muted. Broad paws, acting as natural snowshoes, distribute the cat's weight evenly over the stiffened earth. There is no sound save for the faint, crystalline crack of frozen dew snapping beneath stealthy footfalls. The gentle wind weaving through the pine boughs carries the sharp, clean scent of approaching winter, mingling with the earthy tang of damp bark and cold stone. High above, a distant raven calls out into the empty sky, its voice echoing against the ridges before fading into the vast, slumbering expanse. The lynx pauses, lifting its head toward the crisp air. Prominent black ear tufts pivot independently, funneling the faintest vibrations of the waking forest straight to the inner ear, while long, sensitive facial whiskers brush against the icy air currents to read the microscopic shifts in temperature. Standing poised in the gray and gold light, the cat embodies the quiet resilience of the northern wilderness, perfectly attuned to the shifting rhythm of the changing year. With every quiet breath, the lynx's pelage performs a silent, remarkable feat of biological engineering. This heavy winter coat is far more than a simple covering. It is a complex, two-tiered defense system evolved over millennia to conquer the harshest northern freezes. Beneath the longer, coarser guard hairs which shimmer with silver-tipped camouflage against the frost-dusted golden leaves lies an intensely dense, woolly underfur. This underlayer traps microscopic pockets of warm air close to the skin, creating an impenetrable thermal barrier that locks in body heat even as ambient temperatures plummet toward the sub-zero threshold. The color palette of this autumn coat is equally specialized. The pale grays, muted buffs, and faint, ghost-like spots mimic the dappled shadows of bare branches, lichen-encrusted boulders, and the last frozen foliage of the taiga floor. As the cat shifts its weight, the individual hairs adjust, sliding smoothly against one another to shed the gathering frost before it can melt and chill the skin beneath. On the large, broad feet, thick fur grows densely between the paw pads, shielding sensitive flesh from the ice while maximizing surface area. Every square inch of this magnificent body has been physically transformed by the shortening days, preparing the apex predator to move through the impending deep snows as a phantom, entirely untroubled by the bitter bite of the shifting season. Stepping forward from its sheltered niche, the adult lynx begins its morning patrol across the hardening terrain. The forest floor is a delicate mosaic of frozen debris, where crisp fallen leaves and brittle twigs threaten to betray even the slightest motion. Yet, the cat's locomotion is a masterclass in silent mechanics. Each movement is calculated, deliberate, and entirely fluid, driven by powerful yet relaxed muscles that have mastered the contours of this vast home range. As the broad paws descend, they act as natural snowshoes, distributing the animal's weight evenly across the fragile, frost-rimmed surface. This anatomical adaptation prevents the lynx from plunging into pockets of thawing mud beneath the crust, ensuring that every step is remarkably buoyant. The thick fur densely packed between the paw pads functions as an acoustic dampener, absorbing the crunch of frozen lichen and snapping twigs before the sound can ripple outward into the quiet morning air. The cat places its hind paws precisely in the exact impressions left by its forepaws, a specialized gait known as direct registering that halves its auditory footprint in the sleeping taiga. With every stride, the lynx glides over the uneven landscape like a shadow passing over stone. There is no hesitation, no wasted energy, and no disturbance to the stillness of the woods. The ambient soundscape remains undisturbed save for the gentle settling of morning frost and the distant, resonant croak of a raven high above the pines. Perfectly adapted to the physiological demands of the changing season, the solitary hunter moves onward, a silent phantom woven seamlessly into the gray and gold fabric of the northern wilderness. Pausing beside a granite outcrop draped in pale lichen, the lynx turns its attention upward. The air is so cold and still that sound travels with astonishing clarity across the valley. In this quiet, freezing environment, survival depends as much on what can be heard as what can be seen. The cat's ears, large and triangular, pivot independently to catch the subtle acoustics of the dormant forest. At the very tips of these amber-fringed ears stand prominent dark tufts of stiff hair. Far from being mere ornaments, these specialized plumes function like miniature acoustic antennas, channeling high-frequency vibrations directly down into the ear canal and amplifying the faintest whispers of the taiga. Every micro-shift in the atmosphere registers in the stillness. Beneath the crust of frozen soil, miles away, the faint shifting of underground frost lines creates a low-frequency hum. Through the sensitive pads of its paws and the acute architecture of its inner ear, the lynx perceives these geological vibrations. Reading the pulse of the changing season, higher up, a gentle breath of wind brushes through distant pine needles, carrying the microscopic rustle of a vole tunneling safely beneath a snowy root system. The lynx remains utterly motionless, breathing out slow, invisible wisps of warm air that vanish instantly into the biting cold. Its eyes are half closed, tuned entirely to the auditory tapestry of the waking wilderness, absorbing the peaceful rhythm of a world resting softly on the razor edge of winter. With a fluid, effortless motion, the great cat steps up onto the weathered trunk of a fallen spruce. This elevated vantage point grants a sweeping view of the valley below, where the ancient taiga stretches in quiet gradients of gray birch, deep pine green, and frost-gilded moss. Here, standing upon the timber, the lynx embodies absolute mastery over its expansive home range. Every ridge, ravine, and hunting run within this vast territory has been mapped through countless seasons of patient travel. This sovereign claim is maintained not through constant conflict, but through quiet, enduring presence. Along the perimeter, scent markings deposited on frozen boulders and rough bark communicate an unmistakable boundary to any neighboring rivals. The lynx surveys its domain with a calm, unhurried confidence born of total physiological adaptation. Its dense, multi-layered winter coat, now fully transitioned into a thick shield of insulating gray and silver fur, locks in body heat against the relentless draft. Oversized paws, acting as natural snowshoes, distribute its weight evenly over the hardening crust of the forest floor, ensuring silent, frictionless movement across every acre. There is a profound stillness in the cat's posture. The dark tufts on its ears remain poised, catching the faintest whispers of the turning season, while its golden brown eyes reflect the pale, cold light of the morning sun. Breathing slowly, seamlessly blending into the muted colors of the bark and stone, the feline rests in complete harmony with the wilderness. It is an apex predator perfectly attuned to the rhythms of the north, holding dominion over a landscape poised delicately on the threshold of winter. As the morning sun yields its brief, unwarming struggle against the firmament, the sky above the taiga shifts seamlessly into a heavy, uniform shade of slate gray. The pale light softens, draining the last remnants of amber and copper from the forest floor. A profound hush settles over the canopy, deeper and more absolute than the silence of the dawn. The gentle wind through the pines subsides entirely, leaving the branches frozen in place as the atmospheric pressure drops. Sensing the impending meteorological shift, the lynx turns away from the valley and descends from the fallen trunk with the same liquid grace that defined its morning patrol. It moves with measured economy toward a deeply sheltered nook beneath the low-hanging boughs of an ancient spruce and a tumbled slab of granite. This protected hollow offers an ideal microhabitat, shielding the cat from the bitter draft that will accompany the coming storm. Curling its long body into a compact, thermal sphere, the cat tucks its heavy, fur-padded paws neatly beneath its chest. It wraps its luxurious tail, tipped in solid charcoal black, comfortably around its nose to warm the incoming breath before it reaches the delicate nasal passages. The dense underfur, packed tightly against the skin, traps a thick layer of insulating air, preparing the feline physiology for the sub-zero temperatures ahead. With eyes slowly closing to a mere sliver, the great cat settles into the soft, frozen moss. Its rhythmic breathing matches the tranquil cadence of the waiting forest, completely attuned to the slow, heavy descent of the northern winter. The northern taiga has surrendered entirely to the quiet command of winter. For days, the sky has released a gentle, unending descent of crystalline flakes, transforming the sprawling wilderness into an immaculate sanctuary of white. Heavy drifts now drape over the ancient limbs of black spruce and towering pines, bending their boughs toward the earth in graceful, frozen arches. This deep accumulation of snow acts as a profound acoustic dampening blanket across the forest. Sound waves, trapped and absorbed by the porous structure of countless falling crystals, simply vanish. The usual sharp snaps of the woods soften into a hush so complete that the forest seems to hold its breath. Only the whisper of a gentle breeze through the needle-laden canopies and the faint, settling creak of freezing branches break the stillness, creating an atmosphere of utter peace. In this frozen realm, every surface is reborn in monochrome. The heavy snowfall alters not just the scenery, but the very physics of the ecosystem, forming a deep, powdery labyrinth that challenges all who walk upon it. Yet, this quiet transformation is also an invitation, heralding the peaceful domination of a specialist well-crafted for the cold. The landscape waits in the dimming afternoon light, blanketed in a profound, restful stillness. From beneath the low-hanging boughs of a snow-laden fir, a broad, pale head emerges. The mature lynx steps out into the open clearing, pausing to test the density of the drift before it. Where another predator would plunge deep into the powdery trap, exhausting its energy with every stride, this cat stands securely upon the surface. The secret lies in a remarkable feat of evolutionary anatomy, the lynx's oversized paws. Measuring nearly the size of a dinner plate relative to the cat's slender body, these paws function as natural, biological snowshoes. During the harsh winter months, the skin between the toes grows a dense mat of coarse, stiff fur, creating broad cushions that dramatically increase surface area. When the lynx shifts its weight, the toes splay outward reflexively, spreading the animal's mass across the fragile crust of snow. This specialized adaptation reduces foot-loading pressure to a fraction of that exerted by other winter mammals. As the lynx begins to move across the meadow, its gait is remarkably buoyant. Each step is an effortless glide over the deep drifts, leaving only the faintest, shallow impressions in the pristine white blanket. The thick winter fur not only prevents the cat from sinking into the sub-zero depths, but also insulates the sensitive pads against the biting frost. With every silent stride, the physics of the taiga yield to the quiet perfection of the design, allowing the hunter to traverse its frozen kingdom with an unburdened, floating grace. Unlike the heavy-footed wolves or foxes that must exhaust precious calories by plunging shoulder deep into the drifts, this apex hunter conserves its energy with every rhythmic stride. The biomechanics of the lynx's travel are a study in supreme efficiency. As the cat accelerates from a slow pause into a steady, undulating walk, its long limbs reach forward in a fluid, measured cadence. The hind paws step precisely into the exact impressions left by the forepaws, a specialized locomotion known as direct registering. This careful placement minimizes disturbance to the pristine snow cover and ensures that every step is taken on ground that has already proven firm beneath the lead foot. The weight transfer is remarkably smooth, rolling seamlessly from the cushioned heel to the splayed toes without any abrupt downward pressure. In a season where every movement exacts a metabolic cost, this floating gait keeps the lynx's heart rate low and its body heat carefully regulated beneath the silver-tipped fleece. There is no wasted motion, no frantic scramble against the resistance of the powder. Instead, the feline moves with the quiet confidence of an animal entirely at home in the deep freeze. The forest floor, typically a maze of physical obstacles and energy-draining traps, becomes an open highway of packed white stillness. Through these low-impact strides, the mature cat preserves its vitality for the long night ahead, gliding over the landscape as if detached from gravity itself, leaving the tranquil wilderness undisturbed in its wake. All around the traveling cat, the great northern forest holds its breath. This is a landscape redefined by silence, where the sheer volume of fresh snowfall alters the fundamental acoustics of the taiga. Sound waves, which normally travel vast distances through the skeletal trunks of birch and pine, meet a forgiving barrier of countless hexagonal ice crystals. Each delicate flake acts as an acoustic sponge, trapping the vibrations of the wider world. The gentle wind whispering through the canopy creates no sharp whistles here. Instead, it is softened into a low, breathing sigh, swallowed entirely by the deep white drifts. This profound acoustic dampening creates a sanctuary of restorative quiet. When a distant, frozen bough finally yields to the weight of its powdery load, the resulting snap is muted, reaching the lynx's ears not as a crack, but as a dull, distant thud. To human senses, this enveloping stillness might feel isolating or stark, but to the apex predator, it is an exquisite theater of enhanced perception. Free from the chaotic interference of ambient noise, the lynx's world narrows to the pure, unmasked acoustics of the snowfield. The black tufts at the tips of its ears, stiff hairs that act as directional antennae, twitch independently, sweeping the quiet air for the slightest acoustic anomaly. Beneath the thick crust of the white blanket, a subterranean world of movement persists, hidden from sight yet loud in its absence of other sound. The soft, muffled hush of the forest floor amplifies the minuscule scratching of a meadow vole beneath 3 feet of powder. Resting in this profound acoustic calm, The hunter becomes one with the stillness, wrapped in a peaceful auditory cocoon that lulls the sleeping wilderness into an even deeper, untroubled rest. Pausing near the heavy trunk of an ancient, snow-bent spruce, the lynx melts seamlessly into the twilight. Its dense winter coat, frosted with silver-tipped guard hairs, provides absolute camouflage against the drifted mound. Only the amber glow of its intelligent eyes betrays its presence, scanning the vast undulating whiteness with patient authority. The late afternoon light dips lower, casting long, cobalt shadows across the powder. In this cool, fading illumination, the cat's vision proves extraordinary. Its large pupils, expanded to capture every available photon in the dim subarctic air, detect the slightest variance in the pristine surface, a microscopic shift in crystal alignment, a shadow where no shadow should rest. The black ear tufts pivot once more, triangulating the faint, rhythmic pulse of life hidden far beneath the frozen crust. Every muscle in the feline's powerful frame is a study in controlled relaxation, coiled with quiet potential yet entirely at peace with the freezing dusk. The gentle wind breathes softly through the laden boughs above, shaking loose a cascade of diamond dust that sparkles in the dying sun before settling without a sound. Standing sentinel in the profound chill, the lynx is the very heart of the quiet taiga. It watches the horizon fade from pale gold to deep, velvet indigo, presiding over the sleeping forest as the long, tranquil night gently takes hold. The pale gold of the horizon surrenders entirely to the advancing night, drawing a curtain of deep, velvety indigo across the sky. As the sun slips below the tree line, the temperature drops further, turning the breath of the taiga into plumes of frosty vapor that vanish into the calm air. The indigo shadows stretch long and soft over the endless drifts, erasing the final traces of daytime contrast and bathing the entire landscape in a uniform, silvery twilight. This shift in light triggers a subtle awakening in the nocturnal world. The lynx blinks slowly, its amber eyes adjusting effortlessly to the gathering darkness through a tapetum lucidum, a specialized reflective layer behind the retina that maximizes every remaining trace of starlight. With a quiet, fluid motion, the cat lifts a broad, fur-padded paw from the drift and places it down with absolute, feather-light precision. The transition from day to evening brings no haste, only a steady, unhurried rhythm suited to the profound stillness of the woods. Far above, the first brilliant stars pierce the indigo dome, glittering with cold, steady light. A gentle whisper of wind moves through the rigid pines, coaxing a soft, dry sigh from the snow-laden boughs. The forest grows quieter still, wrapped in an insulating blanket of ice and silence. The lynx glides onward through the glowing twilight, a shadow of unmatched grace melting seamlessly into the vast, peaceful expanse of the frozen northern winter. High above the boreal forest, the Arctic night unfolds in a vast, silent dome of indigo and diamond dust stars. There is no moon, yet the landscape glows with a surreal luminescence, cast upward by billions of microscopic ice crystals resting upon an untouched snowpack. The air is exquisitely cold, biting and pure, measuring well below freezing. Out of the deep, shadowed embrace of an ancient spruce grove, a solitary figure emerges. The mature lynx steps into the open clearing with a fluid, effortless grace, moving as a quiet extension of the winter shadows themselves. Around the cat, the world is held in a profound, crystalline stillness, broken only by the very faintest whisper of a high-altitude Arctic wind brushing the tips of distant pines. Wrapped in a magnificent winter coat, the lynx feels none of the harshness of the sub-zero environment. Beneath the long, silver-tipped guard hairs lies a dense, woolly underfur, nature's ultimate thermal blanket, trapping a warm layer of air against the skin and ensuring perfect thermoregulation across the entire home range. Every motion across the pristine snow is deliberate and measured. Broad, heavily furred paws act as natural snowshoes, distributing the cat's weight so evenly that each step leaves barely a whisper upon the powder. With every slow advancement, a faint, crisp squeak of settling snow rises into the quiet night, the sole reminder of motion in a sleeping wilderness. The lynx pauses near the center of the glittering clearing, turning its broad face toward the starlight, perfectly attuned to the vast, peaceful expanse of the deep winter night. In this biting stillness, survival depends entirely upon the architecture of the cat's physique. The lynx's dense winter pelt is an engineering masterpiece of evolutionary thermoregulation. While the ambient air temperature plummets far below zero, the cat remains wrapped in absolute warmth. The secret lies in the duality of the fur. The coarse, silvery guard hairs shed falling frost and block the chilling pressure of the Arctic wind, while the luxurious underfur beneath forms a labyrinth of microscopic chambers. Within these fine, woolly fibers, countless tiny pockets of air are captured and warmed by the body's natural heat. This trapped thermal layer creates an impenetrable barrier against the cold, operating with such high efficiency that melting snow never touches the skin. Instead, the powdery flakes simply rest atop the cold outer guard hairs, unable to penetrate the thick, insulating shield. This physiological perfection means the lynx expends virtually zero metabolic energy merely to maintain core body temperature. There is no shivering, no discomfort, and no frantic search for shelter. The predator simply exists in harmony with the frost, completely insulated against the elements. As the cat stands motionless beneath the diamond dust stars, the frigid air washes over the magnificent ruff framing its face. Yet beneath this plush armor, the lynx rests in a state of effortless, profound coziness. Every breath is steady and slow, matching the tranquil rhythm of a frozen world where warmth is carried within, moving effortlessly through the deepest heart of winter. Halting in the silver center of the clearing, the lynx becomes a statue carved of shadow and starlight. The heavy, powdery snow yields not an inch further as the cat shifts its weight, lifting a magnificent, broad head to greet the quiet air. Here, in the profound acoustic purity of the Arctic night, stillness is not merely an absence of sound. It is a canvas waiting to be read. The lynx's most extraordinary instruments, two sweeping, raven-black tufts atop triangular ears, pivot upward with deliberate precision. Acting as natural directional antennae, these stiffened hairs catch the faintest pressure waves traveling through the crisp atmosphere, channeling whispers of the hidden world directly into the wide auditory canals. Beneath the undisturbed blanket of diamond dust snow lies an entirely separate realm, the subnivean layer. In this hidden domain, insulated from the fierce, bitter frost above, life carries on in miniature. Through the deep, packed powder and underlying crust, the lynx tunes into frequencies imperceptible to most other creatures. A tiny, rhythmic scratching reaches the cat's awareness, the microscopic tunneling of a meadow vole navigating its branching grass runways far beneath the surface. Each rustle of dry vegetation, each minute displacement of ice crystals sends delicate vibrations traveling upward through the snowpack. The lynx's brain maps these faint, rhythmic pulses with absolute clarity, triangulating the exact distance and depth of the hidden movement. The golden eyes remain half closed, not in sleep, but in deep, absolute concentration, absorbing the rich acoustic tapestry of the frozen wilderness. With the precise location firmly locked in the cat's awareness, the mature lynx resumes its slow, deliberate forward motion. The mechanics of winter locomotion across this bottomless powder require a marvel of biological engineering. Beneath the thick winter legs are exceptionally wide, snowshoe-like paws, uniquely adapted to distribute the cat's body weight across vast surface areas of fragile snow crystals. As the broad foot pads lift and descend, they are densely cushioned with stiff, interdigital fur that traps air and prevents sinking into the powdery drifts. Each step is placed with absolute physical precision. The lynx glides forward like a drifting shadow, minimizing friction and eliminating any harsh sound that might betray its presence to the world below. As the gentle weight presses down, the acoustic profile of the silent forest responds with a soft, crisp squeak, the delicate sound of countless microscopic snow crystals compressing beneath the fur-padded paws. This dry, musical crunch is the only signature of passage in the vast white expanse. There is no stumbling, no wasted effort, and no sudden sinking into the freezing crust. Every movement flows into the next with fluid, undisturbed grace, maintaining an effortless buoyancy as the solitary hunter navigates the deep drifts toward the edge of the clearing. Beyond the edge of the open powder, the familiar geography of the home range slumbers beneath an unbroken blanket of white. Under the endless canopy of pinprick stars, landmarks long known to the seasoned lynx are altered and softened by deep, undulating snowdrifts. Boulders that offered summer shade and fallen logs that served as autumn pathways are now transformed into smooth, rounded mounds of pristine frost. Yet, the cat navigates this blanketed topography effortlessly, relying on a profound mental map forged through years of inhabiting these boreal reaches. Beneath the frozen surface, faint scent traces and familiar contours guide the way. The lynx does not merely see the winter landscape, it remembers it. Through memory and the subtle clues of buried terrain, the predator traces the hidden contours of the earth below. There is an intimate, ancestral familiarity in the way the cat reads the white expanse, moving with absolute confidence through a world that has been entirely rewritten by the cold. A gentle, nocturnal breeze drifts through the clearing, carrying the clean scent of frozen pine sap and distant ice. The lynx pauses briefly beside a buried outcrop, lifting its head to let the crisp air wash over its dense facial ruff. The ambient chill deepens, yet the thick underfur and guard hairs maintain a perfect thermal equilibrium against the night. Surrounded by the serene quiet of the deep winter night, the solitary hunter stands as an enduring part of the northern wilderness, perfectly attuned to the rhythm of the frozen earth. As the night reaches its deepest, coldest hour, the world slows to an even gentler rhythm. The lynx eases its measured pace, drawing closer to the sheltering embrace of an old-growth evergreen grove where the ancient boughs hang low, weighted with undisturbed drifts. Beneath this natural canopy, the wind softens to a bare whisper, cradling the forest in profound quiet. The starry sky above begins to soften slightly at the edges, the deep indigo fading toward a subtle, pearlescent gray at the far rim of the horizon. This imperceptible shift hints at the slow, very distant progression toward morning. Yet for now, the hours remain anchored in deep winter stillness. Standing near the base of a towering spruce, the cat maintains its watchful calm. The dense winter pelt, having regulated body heat flawlessly through hours of sub-zero travel, continues to trap a vital layer of warmth close to the skin. The lynx settles downward into the powdery snow, curling its heavy tail neatly over its paws to shield its nose from the frost. With a slow, rhythmic blink of heavy eyelids, the solitary hunter surrenders to the peaceful solitude of the frozen woods, resting deeply as the starlit night slowly yields to the quiet promise of dawn. The pre-dawn taiga holds its breath beneath a sky of indigo and frost. Across the endless, snow-draped expanse of the northern forest, the temperature has plummeted far below zero, turning the air into a shimmering veil of microscopic ice crystals settling quietly upon the drifts. High above the white landscape, a bitter wind howls through the upper canopy, stripping loose powder from the pine needles and carrying a muffled, distant moan through the timberlands. Out of the gray shadows of the slumbering forest moves an aging Eurasian lynx. His steps are deliberate, measured by the quiet wisdom of many winters. At over a decade old, his joints feel the deep ache of the sub-zero chill, yet his movements remain fluid, guided by an ancient instinctive understanding of the terrain. He navigates the heavy drifts effortlessly, his oversized, fur-covered paws acting as natural snowshoes that distribute his weight across the powdery crust without breaking through. Every ounce of energy is precious now, reserved not for the frantic pursuits of youth, but for the vital art of survival. Ahead, the low-hanging branches of an ancient Norway spruce sweep down to touch the snow, creating a secluded, tent-like hollow sheltered from the biting gale. The lynx ducks beneath the heavy, snow-laden boughs, leaving the howling wind behind in an instant. Here, inside this quiet, timbered sanctuary, the air is still and slightly warmer, cradled by the thick evergreen canopy. He circles twice on the soft, drifted floor, packing the powder down to form a shallow depression, before settling his weight into a compact, protective curl. Within the cradle of the spruce roots, the senior cat arranges his frame with meticulous, economizing care. He tucks his forepaws neatly beneath his chest, shielding the delicate pads from the frozen earth, and curves his spine into a tight, unbroken crescent. This deliberate posture is a masterclass in mammalian thermoregulation, dramatically reducing his exposed surface area to curb the loss of vital body heat. His long tail, thick with winter fur, wraps entirely around his nose and toes, forming a natural muffler that warms the air he inhales before it reaches his lungs. Every physical adjustment honors the reality of his aging physiology. Years of navigating these boreal forests have taught his body how to bank its internal fires. His metabolic rate dips gently, shifting into a low, sustainable conservation mode designed to weather the harshest hours of the night without taxing his joints or burning precious fat reserves. The thick, pale winter coat, dense with hollow guard hairs that trap a microscopic layer of insulating air against his skin, fluffs outward, sealing him inside a personal thermal shield. Against his flank, the deep layer of newly packed snow acts as a secondary barrier, absorbing no warmth and reflecting his own radiated heat back toward his body. He shifts his weight just a fraction of an inch, finding the absolute center of balance where gravity requires no muscular tension at all. His muscles soften, releasing the subtle strains accumulated from a lifetime of pacing the taiga. In this sanctuary of snow and shadow, stillness is a quiet triumph. Beneath the thick hide, an extraordinary biological architecture continues to work in silence. The lynx's winter coat is a marvel of evolutionary engineering, composed of two distinct layers that defeat the sub-zero chill. Dense, woolly underfur grows in thick clusters close to the skin, trapping stagnant air warmed by his body. Rising through this downy blanket are long, silvery guard hairs, which shed falling frost and deflect the bitter draft whispering just beyond the spruce boughs. At the very foundation of his curled posture, his famous snowshoe paws provide an equally crucial service. Measuring nearly 4 inches across, these broad pads are covered in a dense growth of coarse winter fur that acts as an effective thermal cushion. When pressed against the packed snow, this specialized fur prevents the rapid conduction of cold from the frozen earth directly into his joints. The pads themselves possess a unique network of peripheral blood vessels, evolved to keep the tissue just above freezing without wasting vital core heat, a brilliant defense against frostbite in the high boreal wild. Protected by this dual system of fur and specialized morphology, the senior cat radiates almost no warmth into the surrounding air. The microscopic pockets of trapped atmosphere within his pelt act as a nearly impenetrable barrier against the frost. Outside his hidden hollow, the wind might scour the open, white expanses of the taiga, but within the secure perimeter of his resting place, the ambient temperature remains stable. His body has become a sealed, self-sustaining sanctuary of quiet warmth, perfectly attuned to the winter night. Just beyond the lowest evergreen bough, the pre-dawn gale whips through the upper canopy of the taiga. High above the sleeping cat, violent gusts of wind tear through the skeletal branches of birch and pine, carrying a swirling cloud of diamond dust snow across the open forest floor. The forest sings with a restless, howling voice, a frigid current of air driven by high-altitude pressure systems that scour the exposed ridges of the northern wilderness. Yet within the quiet sanctuary beneath the spruce, this turbulence is reduced to a distant, muffled sigh. The heavy, snow-laden branches overhead act as an effective acoustic baffle, absorbing the kinetic energy of the wind and diffusing the sound into a low, soothing hum. Powdery snow shifts gently across the top of the bow roof, whispering as tiny crystals cascade down the outer perimeter without ever penetrating the hollow's interior. Inside this microhabitat, the air is remarkably still and thermally stable. Protected from the wind chill factor that plummets the open wilderness far below zero, the ambient temperature within the spruce shelter remains several degrees warmer than the surrounding landscape. The lynx lies bathed in this pocket of calm, his senses attuned only to the steady, rhythmic sound of his own breathing. Every inhale draws in the clean, resinous scent of pine needles, while each slow exhale releases a soft, invisible plume of warm air that instantly dissipates into the blanket of fur. The ice crystals settling on the outer branches create tiny, musical ticks in the freezing air, blending seamlessly with the deep, whispering sighs of the pine forest. In this sheltered haven, time loses its urgency. The harsh realities of the winter storm exist in another world entirely, leaving the senior cat suspended in an environment of absolute peace, perfectly cradled by the resilience of the ancient boreal woods. For an aging predator, surviving the lean months of the high winter requires a strict biological economy. Every movement carries a metabolic cost, a withdrawal from a finite reserve of energy that cannot be easily replenished when prey is scarce beneath deep, crusting snow. In the prime of youth, the pursuit of hare might span miles of open taiga, but the wisdom of age brings a different strategy. Conservation of vital energy becomes the primary law of survival. By choosing absolute stillness, the senior lynx allows his body to dial down its internal engine, lowering heart rate and reducing caloric expenditure to the absolute minimum required to sustain life. This deliberate inactivity is an exquisite evolutionary adaptation. The thick, multi-layered winter pelage, densely packed with fine, insulating underfur and shielded by longer guard hairs, creates an impermeable thermal barrier. Trapped air between these hollow hairs warms against the skin, forming a personal microclimate that requires virtually no active muscle thermogenesis to maintain. While the storm rages outside, the cat rests in a state of profound physiological efficiency. Muscles soften, joints unburdened by the cold stiffness of travel relax into the spruce needles, and the body's internal resources are dedicated entirely to cellular repair and maintenance. Patience replaces pursuit. In the profound quiet of the boreal dawn, the ancient hunter endures the frost not by fighting the elements, but by perfectly harmonizing with them, resting deeply until the turning of the earth brings a gentler sun. Slowly, the heavy cobalt of the deep night begins to thin at the edges of the northern horizon. A quiet shift moves through the taiga as the deepest hours of pre-dawn surrender to the first tentative breaths of morning. Above the sheltering canopy of the ancient spruce, the howling wind softens, subsiding into a gentle, passing sigh that brushes only the highest, frosted tips of the everdowns. Within the secluded hollow, the ambient temperature remains gently buffered from the Arctic chill outside. The aging lynx stirs just enough to adjust his compact posture, tucking his broad, fur-padded paws a little closer beneath his warm chest. His breathing remains deep, slow, and rhythmic, a steady tide matching the profound tranquility of the winter woods. As the darkness lifts, faint pastel hues of pale rose and lavender filter through the snowy boughs, casting soft amethyst shadows across the undisturbed powder. Tiny ice crystals, loosened by the shifting air currents high above, drift down like diamond dust, settling silently upon the thick, silver-tipped fur of the resting cat. He does not rouse. There is no urgency in this pale twilight, only the quiet continuation of rest. The seasoned hunter has successfully weathered the harshest span of the night, conserving his precious vitality through the mastery of stillness. Surrounded by the vast, frozen expanse of the boreal forest, he remains entirely at peace, held safely within the timeless rhythm of the winter world. The low winter sun traces a slow, descending arc toward the horizon, bleeding amber and soft violet across the vast, frozen expanse of the northern taiga. High upon an exposed granite ridge, the fading light casts long, indigo shadows over untouched drifts of pristine snow. Out of this silent, crystalline landscape steps a solitary figure. Moving with the deliberate, measured grace born of many seasons, a senior lynx ascends the familiar rocky outcrop. The years are etched into the silver-tipped fur of its muzzle and the slight, cautious stiffness in its joints, a natural senescence met with quiet resilience. Yet, there is no hesitation in its path, only the deep, accumulated wisdom of a resident who knows every fold of the terrain. Reaching the highest point of the shelter, the cat pauses. It settles its weight downward, sinking gracefully into a natural cradle of warm stone and powdered snow. Every movement is an exercise in meticulous energy conservation. For an aging apex predator, every calorie is a precious resource, carefully budgeted against the bitter demands of the sub-zero night ahead. As the pastel sky deepens, a gentle breeze whispers through the laden boughs of the surrounding pines, carrying the faint, crisp scent of frost and pine resin. The soft crunch of settling snow fades into the muffled silence of the forest. The veteran cat closes its heavy amber eyes for a brief moment, breathing in the tranquil air of the freezing wilderness, perfectly attuned to the rhythm of the fading day. From this elevated vantage point, the senior lynx looks out over a landscape rendered entirely in memory. Every ridge, hollow, and frozen stream bed below is etched not just in the snow, but deeply into the cat's neural pathways. Years of navigating this unforgiving terrain have forged an intricate mental map, a cognitive spatial archive built from countless seasons of wandering, hunting, and surviving. In the prime of its youth, this domain was maintained through miles of rigorous daily patrols and constant physical exertion. Now, the veteran cat relies on a far more sophisticated conservation strategy, cognitive territorial maintenance. Instead of expending vital metabolic energy on unnecessary travel, the lynx uses its profound familiarity with the ecosystem to anticipate changes. It knows precisely where the snowdrifts pile highest against the deadfall, where sheltered microclimates offer relief from biting gusts, and which hidden pockets of the forest floor are favored by foraging hares. This vast storehouse of ecological experience allows the animal to govern its territory from a place of supreme stillness. Neurological adaptations and a lifetime of conditioned responses guide its awareness without requiring frantic movement. The mind of the aging predator does the heavy lifting, effortlessly tracking invisible boundaries and seasonal shifts across the valley. Every tree trunk and rock face tells a familiar story, whispering of past winters and timeless cycles. Here, atop the granite throne, experience is the ultimate survival tool, transforming quiet observation into a masterclass of endurance. Down in the valley, the temperature plummets as the last rays of the sun slip below the horizon, but upon the rocky shelf, the senior lynx remains wrapped in a state of profound physiological equilibrium. Survival in the high taiga during the dead of winter demands a strict metabolic budget, especially for an older animal whose caloric reserves must be guarded with absolute precision. Every unnecessary step, every wasted burst of acceleration represents a costly withdrawal from a finite store of internal heat and energy. To combat the biting cold, the lynx's body employs specialized vascular adaptations. Arteries and veins in the paws share a close, parallel network of blood vessels, a biological countercurrent heat exchanger that prevents the core temperature from dropping while keeping the extremities just warm enough to avoid frostbite. Yet, no physiological mechanism is as effective as stillness itself. By minimizing motion, the cat drastically reduces its basal metabolic rate, lowering oxygen consumption and heat dissipation into the frigid air. Slow, measured breathing fills the quiet space between the rocks. Inhale, exhale. Each respiration is deep and unhurried, matching the deliberate tempo of the sleeping forest. The thick, silvery gray winter coat fluffs outward, trapping a micro layer of air against the skin to create an impenetrable thermal barrier against the descending evening temperature. The cat's muscles relax into the granite contours of the cleft, shedding the physical tensions of youth in favor of an enduring, economical peace. Here, in the quiet heart of the northern winter, doing nothing is not merely rest, it is the ultimate strategy for endurance. High upon the granite shelf, the senior lynx closes its amber eyes halfway, shifting its focus from the visual expanse of the taiga to an invisible world of sound and scent. Movement in the winter forest is rare, but information flows ceaselessly through the freezing air. To intercept these faint whispers, the cat relies on an extraordinary acoustic apparatus. At the tips of its wide, triangular ears stand prominent black tufts. These stiff hairs act as natural directional antennae, gathering low-frequency sound waves and funneling them downward into the ear canal with remarkable precision. A gentle breeze drifts across the ridge, carrying the crisp, clean scent of frozen pine resin mixed with the faint, musky trace of a snowshoe hare miles away in the shadowed valley. The lynx's black-rimmed nose twitches subtly, analyzing the molecular signatures riding the wind. Every olfactory cue is catalogued without a single muscle shifting, an effortless act of sensory perception honed over a lifetime. Above, a distant raven calls out, a raspy, resonant croak that echoes off the snowy slopes before dissolving into the muffled silence of the evergreens. The lynx's left ear swivels independently toward the sound, tracking the bird's slow descent behind a distant ridge. There is no urgency in the movement, only a quiet, meditative awareness. The forest speaks, and the veteran predator listens, deeply attuned to the rhythms of the land. The dropping air currents slide over the dense fur, swirling tiny crystals of snow across the rock face, while the cat remains anchored in the peaceful stillness of the fading day. As the sun dips further below the horizon, a breathtaking alchemy unfolds across the Arctic sky. The vivid pinks and soft corals of the sunset slowly dissolve, yielding to velvety bands of violet and deep indigo that stretch lazily across the endless snowdrifts. Down in the valley, pristine expanses of white catch these fading pastel tones, glowing softly like crushed pearls in the twilight. Long, indigo shadows spill out from the base of every pine and granite boulder, mirroring the quiet dignity of the landscape as day surrenders to night. Against this canvas of fading light, the senior lynx remains utterly motionless, blending seamlessly into the shadowed contours of the ancient rock face. Its thick, silvery gray winter coat, dense with underfur designed for ultimate thermoregulation, catches the cool blue light, making the cat almost indistinguishable from the stone itself. Senescence has brought a silver dusting to the muzzle, a gentle testament to many winters weathered. Yet it renders the veteran predator all the more invisible in the winter gloom. Every surface absorbs the quiet stillness. The faint breeze through the pines slows to a barely perceptible breath, whispering over the crust of the snow. The world contracts into shades of twilight, painted in strokes of lavender and slate. Resting its heavy chin upon a frost-dusted paw, the lynx becomes a natural extension of the mountain, dissolving into the peaceful, hushed beauty of the Arctic dusk. As the last amber embers of daylight fade entirely from the upper atmosphere, the ambient temperature drops precipitously, demanding an immediate physiological response to preserve core warmth. Instinct honed over a decade of survival guides the senior lynx, shifting its weight within the sheltered stone cleft. The cat begins the intricate ritual of preparing for nocturnal rest. Slowly, deliberately, the lynx tucks its large, snowshoe-like paws neatly beneath its chest, minimizing exposed surface area to combat the bitter midnight frost. This postural adjustment is a masterclass in mammalian thermoregulation, drastically reducing convective heat loss from the extremities where blood vessels lie close to the skin. It wraps its long, heavily furred tail, tipped with midnight black, completely around its nose and toes, creating a natural windbreak and a localized microclimate of recycled warmth. The heavy, silvery gray winter coat puffs outward, trapping a thick layer of insulating air against the dropping mercury. With a final, long-drawn sigh that plumed softly into the freezing air, the veteran predator lowers its head. The heavy eyelids droop, though the tufted ears remain finely tuned to the muffled silence of the pine forest, twitching once or twice at the gentle hiss of wind skimming over the hard-packed drifts. Surrounded by the vast, tranquil expanse of the boreal night, the ancient cat surrenders to deep, restorative slumber. The taiga settles into an undisturbed peace, wrapped in the quiet dignity of winter, breathing softly beneath a blanket of endless stars. Far beneath the high, vaulted ceiling of the northern taiga, the winter night descends with the weight of blue velvet. Here, in the undisturbed heart of an ancient grove, monumental Scots pines rise like cathedral pillars. Their furrowed bark holds centuries of resilience, standing sentinel against the sub-zero breath of January. In this sheltered sanctuary, the ancient rhythms of boreal ecology unfold in profound silence. The thick canopy, laden with heavy cushions of pristine snow, acts as a thermal blanket, dampening the frost and trapping the residual warmth of the earth. The air is still, save for the whisper of dry needles brushing against one another when a stray current stirs the upper branches. This old-growth microclimate represents a vital phase in forest succession. Fallen timber and decaying nurse logs beneath the snow enrich the acidic podzol soils, fueling the mycorrhizal networks that connect every root system in the grove. In the ledger of the northern wilderness, nothing is ever truly wasted. Every fallen branch and resting form becomes part of the slow, continuous transformation of the landscape. A muffled snowfall begins anew, each crystalline flake drifting downward in absolute quiet, erasing the faint traces of the waking world. The ambient sounds of the wider forest fade until only the deep, rhythmic pulse of the ecosystem remains, bathed in the pale, ethereal glow of starlight reflecting off deep drifts. The grove waits in patient stillness, cradled in the timeless peace of the midnight forest. Through this pristine expanse of powdery snow, a single, deliberate shadow moves with absolute economy of motion. Each step is a masterclass in energy conservation, honed by countless winters in the unforgiving boreal zone. The aged lynx lifts and places its broad, snowshoe-like paws with effortless precision. These oversized limbs, an extraordinary evolutionary adaptation to the deep drifts of the northern taiga, distribute the predator's weight over the crystalline surface, allowing it to glide rather than sink into the freezing matrix. Every muscle contraction is measured, calculated to preserve precious metabolic reserves as the ambient temperature plunges. There is no wasted effort, no superfluous turn. The thick winter pelage, densely packed with insulating underfur and tipped with silvery guard hairs, shifts softly with the measured cadence of the journey. As the paws compress the pristine snow, they leave behind wide, shallow impressions, silent signatures of a life perfectly attuned to the rhythms of ice and timber. The movement slows further, tapering into a graceful, deliberate crawl beneath the low-hanging boughs of a sheltering pine. The dense network of roots beneath the surface creates a natural hollow, protected from the biting draft of the open clearing. Here, the snow settles gently around the amber-eyed wanderer, undisturbed by the wider winds. In this quiet sanctuary, the ancient predator continues its unhurried approach toward the deepest shelter of the grove, guided by an innate understanding of the landscape it has inhabited for seasons beyond counting. Beneath the sheltering canopy of the ancient giant, the lynx pauses at the edge of the earthen hollow. The exposed root system, stretching outward like weather-worn timber ribs, creates a natural sanctuary shielded from the relentless pressure of the open winter night. In this microclimate, tucked away from the sweeping drafts of the taiga, the ambient air rests a few degrees warmer against the fur, offering a profound reprieve from the freezing atmospheric drop. Slowly, deliberately, the animal yields to the pull of gravity and the deep-seated wisdom of senescence. It lowers its heavy frame into the powder, shifting its weight until the contours of the body match the soft, unyielding cradle of the earth. With meticulous care, the lynx tucks its large, fur-padded paws inward toward the center of the chest. It wraps its long, tufted tail neatly around its nose, forming a compact, insulated sphere designed to minimize exposed surface area and conserve every remaining fraction of metabolic heat. This instinctive behavior, honed by millions of years of mammalian evolution in high-latitude biomes, maximizes thermal efficiency. The dense double coat fluffs outward, trapping a micro-layer of air against the skin that acts as a thermal barrier against the frost. As the heavy eyelids close over the amber eyes, the rhythmic rise and fall of the flanks grows fainter, aligning with the profound, steady heartbeat of the sleeping forest. Sheltered within the embrace of the roots and snow, the veteran hunter surrenders completely to the stillness, enveloped in the quiet, timeless refuge of the winter woods. High above the earthen hollow, a gentle current of midnight air begins to drift through the upper boughs of the ancient pines. The wind moves through the dense cluster of evergreen needles, creating a soft, continuous acoustic veil, a hushed, rustling sigh that completely masks the distant sounds of the open taiga. This natural white noise sweeps across the forest canopy, filtering the chill of the atmosphere and softening the sharp edges of the winter night. Below this botanical ceiling, the silence of the snow takes over. Fresh crystals, settling silently onto the forest floor, absorb the remaining echoes of the wilderness. It is an acoustic phenomenon unique to deep winter. The porous structure of fresh snow acts as a natural sound damper, swallowing sound waves and creating an enclave of profound tranquility. Within this muffled stillness, the lynx's respiration slows further, dropping in frequency to match the steady, unhurried cadence of the wind. With each exhale, a tiny plume of warm vapor dissolves into the frost, mixing with the ambient air of the grove. The autonomic nervous system, regulated by the hypothalamus in response to declining temperatures and metabolic conservation, shifts the body into an ultimate state of rest. Heart rate and breathing become almost imperceptible, harmonizing entirely with the rhythmic pulse of the boreal ecosystem. In this quiet pocket of the midnight forest, time seems to stretch and suspend itself. The boundary between the living organism and the sheltering landscape blurs, wrapped together in the unchanging, peaceful rhythms of the ancient pines. The final release of physical effort arrives as a profound, cellular surrender. Muscles that have propelled silent pursuits across countless miles of frozen terrain finally relinquish their residual tension. In biology, senescence brings a gradual slowing of metabolic fires, a graceful conservation where the body prioritizes inner peace over motion. The lynx allows its weight to settle completely into the yielding contour of the earth, surrendering every ounce of exertion to the patient gravity of the grove. The soft padding of the paws, once designed for stealthy locomotion across brittle crusts, rests motionless. Energy pathways within the biological frame dim gently, like embers settling beneath a soft layer of white ash. There is no struggle against the cold, only a complete alignment with it. The autonomic processes that guarded life through harsh winters now guide the organism into an unbroken, restorative stillness. As the heartbeat slows to a tranquil rhythm, it matches the pulse of the surrounding boreal soil. The boundary separating flesh and bone from the ancient forest dissolves entirely. Microorganisms and fungal networks waiting quietly in the frozen duff recognize the familiar, sacred choreography of decomposition, not as an ending, but as a generous offering back to the living earth. Nutrients bound by seasons of fierce vitality begin their slow, beautiful return to the roots of the towering pines above. Enfolded by deep snow and sheltered by resinous boughs, the form rests in absolute harmony with the wilderness. The deep winter wind continues its low, rhythmic lullaby through the evergreen canopy, watching over the quiet forest floor where all things, in their own time, find their way home to the silence. Every footprint pressed into the crystalline snow over a lifetime eventually melts back into the rich, dark forest floor. In the intricate web of the northern taiga, nothing is ever truly lost or wasted. The elements that built a magnificent predator, calcium, carbon, and trace minerals, are gently reclaimed by the ecosystem, fueling the continuous flow of life in the north. Beneath the towering canopy, subterranean fungal mycelium networks begin their quiet, patient work. These ancient organisms bridge the gap between animal and plant, absorbing the returning nutrients and distributing them outward through the soil. Soon, the very essence of the seasoned hunter will rise again, absorbed by the thirsty roots of the ancient pines and woven into the emerald needles that filter the winter sky. The generations turn like the slow-moving stars overhead. Younger lynx will continue to pad softly across the frozen ridges, guided by the same ancestral instincts written in the wind. The forest remembers every stride, every silent watch, and every breath taken in the crisp sub-zero air. High above the sheltered grove, the deep winter wind sweeps through the branches, singing its eternal, lulling song to the night. The snow falls softly, blanketing the earth in a pure, unbroken mantle of white. All is still, all is balanced, and the ancient woods rest peacefully in the heart of the endless winter night.